Sekouras, dear Dean of Faculty of Social Sciences, to say the first word, please.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the University of the Aegean, it's my pleasure to welcome you in this conference. I want to congratulate the Department of Social Anthropology and History for the organization of this conference. We are thrilled to bring together so many innovative minds related to the subject of the conference. I hope that you're going to have a great time here in Lesbos Island for these days. So get the conference started.
Thank you very much. I would like, please, to call the President of the Department of Social Anthropology and History, Prof. Eleni Gara.
Thank you very much, Nina, and thank you all for coming to Mytilene and say, just as our Dean said, that we are really thrilled to have you here. We are very happy that we were able to organize this conference, a rather challenging one, a hybrid conference with so many participants from all around the world, and on a subject that is especially close to our heart. As you know, the Department of Social Anthropology and History has been the first department in Greece to introduce the study and teaching of social anthropology in Greece, first with postgraduate studies program, and afterwards, it's 30 years almost now, with a pre-graduate program. And we have so many colleagues among us in Greek institutions and internationally who are our graduates, our alumni, and it's wonderful to welcome them back, some of them here now for this conference that is about teaching anthropology, pathways to teaching and learning, and new ways to introduce the discipline of social anthropology to younger generations. Thank you very much, and I hope that we'll have a great conference and a great time here with us.
Now there is another person. Okay, let's say that first of all, we are honored to collaborate and be welcomed and hosted by the University of Aegean and the certain department. We would like to warmly thank the amazing volunteers, the amazing group of organizing committee. They never stopped all this time working hardly and solving problems and making new ideas. One of the collaborators is the Greek Association of Social Anthropologists. I'm not sure that the president is with us now, George Timouris. I'll go on. We would like also to thank a lot the support the two municipalities, Municipality of Mytilene and Municipality of Korydallos. I know that the mayor from Korydallos wants to attend. I don't see him. You cannot see him yet. Anyway, we will proceed. I would like to ask Mrs. Giovanna Guslini. Giovanna, she is going to talk representing all of us, the TAN Network, Teaching Anthropology Network, from EASA, from the European Union of Social Anthropologists, but also the group for World Council Anthropological Associations, where small but strong academic networks all over the world. And we're very happy that we have a lot of people around us, around the world. We have to say that 186 authors are going to present their work in this conference, and we're very happy for this, and we're very thankful about this. Everyone, even if it is in person like you, and thank you very much, we are in person here in Mytilene, in a very warm island in the Aegean Sea, but also all these people that are online and all these attendees that are online too. And step by step, hour by hour, we're going to see it also in our webinars. So many thanks to the amazing volunteers. And I have to say more personally thanks to Carmelina Deca, who is in India, and she has worked a lot. Also, Daphne Larisi is in Athens, and she is ill and she's not with us now. So the floor is for Giovanna Ghislini. Thank you very much.
Thank you, above all, to the university for hosting us in this wonderful occasion. And welcome to everybody. We have a lot of participants in this conference. We have 604 participants. And this is a wonderful achievement. We didn't expect it at all, because we are networks focusing on education. So we tried to keep in contact with other networks, and we had these big results. So we have 409 participants online, and also 195 participants as presenters. So thank you for your interest and for trying to be with us. I said that there is a willing of a networking with other associations. So we started this experience, this adventure, as a teaching anthropology network of the EASA, the European Association. But we had a great help from WCAA task force, WCAA, the World Council of Anthropological Associations. We had help from the IUES Commission on Anthropology and Education, from the Greek Association, and of course from the university. And other associations that will take part in Roundtable 10. For example, the association from South Africa, the association of the Indian Association, Indian Anthropological Society. So there is the willing of not being alone in this willing of trying to give importance to education. Why education? Because education is the hope, the future of anthropology. Teaching and learning will prepare students, not only in university, but also in pre-university, to give hope and future to anthropology. And we have to thank all participants for their contributions. They were very interesting contributions, great contributions. And we tried not to use a methodology top-down, but bottom-up. So in this occasion, you will see that the panels are made up by people who sent these contributions, and we ask you to be the protagonist of these panels. So please go on with your presentation, your great ideas, your suggestions, your discussions, and find connections, because in education, anthropology education, we have to find connections. We don't have to feel alone in facing the challenges that the nowadays problems give also to anthropology. So if you are interested, you can join these associations and also join the final roundtable, in which we can wrap up what you have discussed and your ideas, and we have to go on, and try to outline also the next steps, because in not many weeks there will be, for example, the World Anthropological Union Congress in Guatemala. There will be the EASA, next year there will be the EASA conference in Poznan. So we have other appointments, and we need to prepare for that and for the future also of the Teaching Anthropology Network and all the networks that organized with us this wonderful event. Thank you.
We have 3 lovely days in a very bright light here in the city. Very nice. I smell the blue of the sea. And we will warmly thank the municipality of Mytilene for the support. I would like to thank also the Vice Mayor, Mrs. Erifili Hoteli, but also Vice Mayor, Mr. Nikos Giannakis, and I will ask him to the floor to close this opening of our conference, the formal opening. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning. We welcome you all from all over the world here in Lesbos, in Mytilene. We are very glad to see you here. Hope these days have good opportunities to talk about your main. I'm sorry, I didn't prepare an English speech, so I will say 2 words in Greek if I can. Το Πανεπιστήμιο Αιγαίου έχει κομβική σημασία για το μέλλον του ακροτικού νησιού μας. Ο Δήμος Mytilene στηρίζει και συνεχίζει να είναι δίπλα στο Πανεπιστήμιο, που έχουμε κάνει και ένα σύμφωνο συνεργασίας, ένα μνημόνιο συνεργασίας μαζί, και ήδη έχουμε ξεκινήσει και κάποιες δράσεις. Ένα διεθνές συνέδριο σαν αυτό, με το πολύ ενεργό τμήμα της Ανθρωπολογίας και Ιστορίας, που από όσο ξέρουμε έχει πάνω από 500 συμμετέχοντες περίπου και γύρω στους 200 ομιλητές από όλη την Ευρώπη, Αμερική, Ασία, από πάρα πολλά μέρη από τον κόσμο. Είναι πολύ σπουδαίο να συμβαίνει αυτό στη Mytilene και αξίζουν πολλά συγχαρητήρια σε όλους αυτούς που το διοργάνωσαν. Γιατί γνωρίζουμε το πόσο πολύ δύσκολο και πόσο πολύ χρόνο χρειάζεται για να διοργανωθεί ένα τέτοιο συνέδριο. Και γι' αυτό συγχαρητήρια και πάλι. Από την πλευρά του Δήμου θα συνεχίσουμε να είμαστε εδώ σε ό,τι μπορούμε να φανούμε χρήσιμοι και να βοηθάμε και να σταθούμε δίπλα σας. Και ευχόμαστε να έχετε ένα υπέροχο τριήμερο και να έχουν πολύ καλά αποτελέσματα οι εργασίες σας. Ευχαριστούμε.
So for the locals now, we have to say that that lunch is in the next building in the time of lunch. So we're going to be hosted by the student club and we'll eat together. Please don't forget to register for the formal dinner later on in the day. Please ask from us the Wi-Fi of the university so you can work. And if still you like to attend the excursions, it's a secret, we don't say any more things to the others. You can also ask our volunteers about the details. So the 3 rooms of this conference are on this level, and we have 2 more downstairs. Let's get up and go on board. Thank you very much. So now we are ready to start. So you can go to your panel that you have would like to attend. Okay, I think you have the program. Thank you. Εδώ τελειώσαμε. Εδώ έχει άλλο τώρα, έτσι.
Παρακαλώ, μια πληροφορία. Μ' ακούτε?
Σας ακούμε.
Ναι, είμαι ο Σαμουέλ Παγανώνη. Τώρα. Εγώ πρέπει να μιλήσω στο πάνελ 5. Υπάρχει άλλο ένα link
Which is your panel? Ποιο είναι το πάνελ σας?
Το 5. Anthropology and its public presence.
Ωραία. Άμα πάτε στο πρόγραμμα, θα βρείτε εκεί το link για το συγκεκριμένο πάνελ. Λογικά πρέπει να βγείτε από αυτό, το link που είστε τώρα. Εντάξει?
Ναι, εντάξει. Ευχαριστώ.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Στο πρόγραμμα. Ευχαριστώ.
Το πρόγραμμα που πήρατε χθες το βράδυ όμως, οκ?
Ναι.
Katerina, can you just check that the other speaker is online? Have they logged in?
I am a speaker of the same, I'm Elena Tagliani. I'm the speaker of the same panel as Samuele Paganoni, but I cannot find the link. Could you send me, because I received several emails, and I'm getting confused.
So, just to clarify, this panel now is Anthropology in the Pre-University Classroom. So who we have to speak today in this slot is Arne, Anna, and Joseph. If you are in a different panel, you have to go back to your program, and then you have to follow the link from the program. We don't have all the panels from this link.
Okay, I understand. Just I thought I followed the right link. So I'm afraid I don't have the right link.
What is the name of your panel?
Public Anthropology. The panel number 5.
Okay, number 5 is starting at 10:50 local time. So you're about a couple of hours early.
Okay. Okay.
But you can join us, you can stay with us. Please do join us to stay with us. And you know you're in the right room.
That one is the right link. Just we have to, okay.
Oh, lovely.
Okay.
So we have two speakers in person. Katerina is the third speaker online.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Katerina, can you please check if the third speaker is online?
So is that me?
Yes, I can see Joseph, but I cannot see the other two speakers.
They're here. They're here with us. So would you guys like to grab the chairs so you can be both on stage and then you can take the microphone depending for your presentation? We have the chairs here. So give us a couple of minutes and we'll be ready for you.
So Katerina, we'll hand back to you. So you can do the introductions, say the order of the speakers and how much time the speaker is having, and let us know if we need any support from the in-person room.
So, hi everyone. I won't say welcome, but because I'm not physically there, but I can see that two of you are there, which is good news. I can see Joseph, who is online. So the time is 9:26. So we are a little bit, well, it's no big deal in terms of timing. So it's good. Perfect. So welcome to this session, exploring the rich intersections between education and anthropology. By the way, I'm Katerina. My name is Katerina Asanaki. I'm Greek. I'm based in Brussels, so I couldn't make it physically from Brussels to Lesbos for this conference today, but I'm super delighted to be here. I mean, virtually. So personally, with a background in anthropology and migration studies, I'm also curious to hear how your papers have shed light and how people learn, adapt, and create meaning across cultures and so on. So I'm also here to pitch this very interesting panel to you. And let's see about it. Our first presenter is going to be Arne. Am I pronouncing it right? It's
the E at the end should be emphasized a little bit more, like Arne.
Arne. Okay, our first presenter, Arne, he's joining us. So I will not say anything about yourselves. It's no use me talking on you. You will present yourselves one by one. Arne is going to talk, so for each and every one of you is going to talk for about 20 minutes, if that's all right for you. So maybe, you can share if there's anything any extras you want to talk about. We can always discuss afterwards. There's going to be a Q&A afterwards, of course, as usual. So each speaker has about 20 minutes, and so we can start this if you are okay. I don't know how ready you all are.
I'm very much
So
ready. I still have to open my PowerPoint, but that shouldn't be an issue. Hello everyone. I'm very honored to be presenting as the first one of this panel early in the morning. What I will be presenting you is the result of 2 years of being a teacher, a bit of the combined role of a teacher researcher. This is the first time I'm presenting this, so excuse me if the structure is still a bit shaky here and there. I hope the logic that I used throughout this will still be clear. If not, you can stop me. I'm also used to speaking a bit more standing up, being a teacher for 2 years, so the gesticulation of the hands will be a bit weird, but whatever. Okay, let me open up my PowerPoint. Okay. Then I guess I have to share the screen, or is it already? Oh, it's already the case. Okay, perfect. Then I can just start. Can the Zoom audience see it? Just a confirmation whether you can see the PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint, Katerina? I still need to share.
Nope. We need to do this.
I need to share. Okay, I figured it out.
It's fine.
Perfect. Okay, now you should be able to see what I'm looking at. Okay, so I'll start, no further ado. The title of my work is Make Sure That They Know the Classroom is Yours. I'll be mostly talking about space, how in the school environment, all kinds of actors make claims to space within the school. Now, the title of this presentation was handed to me as a piece of advice from a teacher when I just started teaching. I got to teaching a bit by accident, to be honest. When I first started teaching, I thought this would be something that would be like 3 months, 4 months, until I finished my anthropology thesis, master thesis. As it turned out, it was 2 years. And during my first teaching session, the first school that I worked at, One day I was sitting in the teaching room preparing my classes, and one of the most experienced teachers of that school approached me, and he gave me this as advice. He said to me, Arne, you have to make sure that they know the classroom, the students know the classroom is yours. And at that time, it seemed eerily domineering in some way. It felt a bit scary even, but over my teaching career, I came to reinterpret this advice again and again and again. It became quite paradigmatic in how I came to understand how space is claimed at and owned within the post-colonial school. In my PowerPoint, how will I work? I'll basically start from the macro and go to the micro, from big to small. I'll first talk about the general field that I taught in. Then I'll move to the school that I taught in. Then I'll move to the hallway that I was sitting in. My classroom was sitting here. You see a sketch I made of the hallway where I spent 1 year waiting in front of the door, all my students. And then I will talk a bit about how I was confronted with my limits as of my combined identity as a teacher researcher, and how I eventually came to adopt post-qualitative research to engage in some kind of new conversation with these limits and the result of this attempt. I basically carried out a small-scale ethnographic project with some of my students, which had some interesting results, but I'll get to that. Let me get started. Okay, so I taught for 2 years in Brussels. That's what Katerina and I share. In and around the city, I worked in 3 different schools. Here you can see on the map those 3 different schools. I think this is in front of it. Yeah, one of them in the center of the city, Brussels itself. That's where I worked the longest, for a year. One of them in the outskirts, and one of them in a secondary city a bit farther away. I chose these more or less strategically because each of these schools had a different relationship towards the city and a different logic in the hierarchy of wider education. But these are all Dutch language schools. Now, what you have to know about Belgium, there are 2 communities, Dutch community, French community. And in Brussels, there's both a French language school network and a Dutch language school network. The Dutch one is quite interesting because in Brussels, only 2% of the people living there speak Dutch as their native language. Yet 1 in 5 of all students in Brussels go to a Dutch language school, which means that most of the students in those schools only speak Dutch as their second or third language, which creates a very interesting environment. And it's also, in my mind, and I'll use this term for it, it makes Dutch language education a sort of nationalist cum humanitarian project from the Flemish imagined community. What do I mean with this? Dutch language education in Brussels is nationalist in the sense that it's an attempt by Flanders, by the Dutch, Flanders is a Dutch language area, the Dutch region of the country. It's an attempt from Flanders to claim space within Brussels. Although Dutch language speakers are quite rare in Brussels, it's still a way to have some sort of say within the capital, and its Dutch language education is the main pillar of Flemish presence, of Dutch presence within the city. By supporting the school network, there is some kind of Flemish presence. But it's also political in the sense that this is not unique to Dutch language education. It's common all over Europe and beyond. It's also vested on secularism. It's a movement against the outward display of religious beliefs and the creation of the neutral space of the school, which in effect mainly targets Muslim women. Just like in France, with the whole concept laïcité, in most schools in Brussels wearing the Muslim headscarf is forbidden. There are only 2 schools where this is not the case, and in one of them I happen to work at. And this, of course, leads to Muslims being perceived as kind of eternal strangers. But I call this a nationalist humanitarian project. Not only nationalist, but also humanitarian. This whole, all these nationalist ideas of dominance over the capital city are cloaked in a humanitarian engagement to save these enfranchised minorities of Brussels. When I say to people that I'm a teacher in Brussels, they're always like, oh, what a heavy burden, white man's burden, what a heavy burden you've undertaken to go to such a challenging space, the chaos of the city, to have to teach people who do not speak Dutch as their native language, who are mostly from racialized minorities. There is some kind of humanitarian logic involved in this. Some kind of, when teachers in Dutch language schools, most of them come from Flanders, from further away from the city, and they go to the city with the idea of contributing to something, doing something more noble, something higher. And here we also see this interesting cycle between repression and compassion that Didier Fassin used. The idea of being compassionate, but at the same time repressing people, repressing the religious beliefs and the identities of the people you're teaching, but still having some sort of compassion with them. And I think in this way, and I will not delve too deep into this because it kind of strays me away, but in this way, it also echoes a bit colonial education in the Belgian colony of Congo, where also the cycle of compassion and repression was involved. The Belgian colony of Congo had the most extensive education network of all European colonies, of course, mostly practically only primary school. And this was, of course, to create colonial subjects in the desired image of the colonizer, which in the case of Dutch language education in Brussels, there are some echoes in this. There are some similarities in this, but I won't delve too deep into that. Borders have to be defended, of course. It's still a kind of a nationalist project, and so borders have to be defended, often up until the point of absurdity. When it comes to secularism, when it comes to neutrality, I'll give you one example. This is a school I worked at. This is the school in Leuven, in a secondary city, the one all the way to the right. And in this school, there was an interesting incident where this I copied from the weekly communiqué of this school. And there was an issue that students, female students, they were not allowed to wear a headscarf in school. But what they did is before they left the school, they would go to the bathroom to retie, to use mirrors to retie their headscarf. And this was a problem because this meant that for a few seconds, they would still be moving inside the school wearing their headscarf, transgressing the neutrality, the secular space of the school. Big problem. Borders have to be defended. So the temporary solution that this communiqué proposes is that the students have to move as quickly as possible to the outside of the building. They're not allowed to go to their lockers or to linger or whatever, wearing their headscarf. But for a more permanent solution, they suggested for next year to build mirrors outside of the school so they can retie their headscarf there and they don't have to re-enter the building. So borders defended. So up even to the point of absurdity. Now, my main field site was a school in the center of Brussels in one of the more disadvantaged neighborhoods, Anderlecht, and this school was called Innova. Now, Innova is a quite interesting school. It is independent of the two main education networks of the country, this being the state network and the Catholic network. It's instead organized by the Turkish community. And most of the students are from Maghrebi origin or Turkish origin, with some outliers from Eastern Europe and farther afield. And this made the school quite interesting in many different ways. And I would say that in my experience, this school was part of a wider struggle over belonging by racialized minorities in the post-colonial metropole. In the first place, it's interesting that they chose to use Dutch as a language of instruction. It is a Dutch language school. Most of the teachers there were just as fluent in French, and most of the students were more comfortable in French. Yet they chose Dutch as a language of instruction, as a way of claiming space in the country and as a way of making sure that their offspring, who were often treated in a racialized manner in other schools, had a more clear path towards higher education and towards high status employment. But also, it was one of the only two schools in the city where the headscarf was allowed. And in fact, a majority of the teachers and female students wore the headscarf, which is also a way of claiming space within this post-colonial city. And by transgressing these norms, by bringing something that's like not secular within a secular space. The transgression, to me, the result is to me is both a transgression and complicity with the neoliberal school. All the tracks at this school were in general education. There were no vocational tracks at the school because the only way they could attain a presence claim to space in the city is by seeking higher education and high value, high status employment, which vocational training would generally not lead to. But at the same time, it also transgresses these borders. It repurposes the national humanitarian structure of Dutch language education towards new goals. So it was a quite interesting school. And most of what I will be telling you about the rest of the presentation will be situated in the school. I'll be shifting scales now. I've been talking about claims to space on the macro scale, the big scale. I'll be going towards the small scale, the micro scale. because in my mind, most of these claims to space on a macro level actually take place or are intertwined with the small scale struggles over space that take place within the schools. I'll introduce the school to you as a collection of heterotopias. What do I mean with this? The school is a combination of all sorts of different spaces that in their own way all embody the kind of symbolic dimensions that are behind them. The classroom is a very simple example of this. In the classroom, one glance of the eye and you know immediately who is inferior, who is superior, who is children infantilized and who is the teacher. The very architecture of the room is built for this. Hallways, on the other hand, and I'll be mostly speaking about hallways, are more confusing in that sense. Hallways are often in schools a kind of contested space. There's often a sort of battle or sort of struggle between teachers and students or different factions of students who owns the hallways and who can claim space within these hallways. There are, of course, lots of other heterotopias in the school. Elevators are very interesting. They're only allowed to be used by teachers, so they tend to use it even if it's not strictly necessary as a way of like secluding themselves from the chaos of the hallway. Digital spaces are also often, of course, very major. And in fact, the classroom is a bit a place where the charismatic and the bureaucratic, the digital and the classroom meet each other. Successful teaching is about being funny, joking, being charismatic. But when it comes to defending the boundaries of this space, teachers rely on the bureaucratic, on digital spaces. Very common technique was to, if a student's annoying, to start writing their name on the blackboard, or to take a pen and be like, as a warning of like, I'm gonna write down your name, I'm gonna name you, I'll put you in the database, and this will have some sort of result. But I will not delve too deep into this. We'll be talking about the hallways. In the hallways was a place where there was a constant game of cats and mice. In Dutch, this is a cat and mouse spell, a game where the students would do all sorts of naughty behavior, and then they would run away or hide or find some excuse when a teacher came by. And Innova had lots of trouble in getting some kind of control over their hallways. This was a constant struggle. A struggle that they tried to solve by installing cameras. They couldn't really get much of a sight over those hallways, so they installed those cameras. Of course, they didn't install any cameras in the classrooms because teachers, they not only defend their borders of their space against students, but also against curious inlookers from outside of the classroom. So cameras only in the hallways. So that was a way for a school to get some kind of control over their hallways. It didn't work. Students didn't care much about the cameras, or they didn't think that the consequences of being caught were that major. But it was still interesting when in the morning, when I went to the administrator's office and I could see the screen with all the cameras, I could see the whole school. It did give some sense of control. The whole idea of miniaturizing the world. Panoptic systems often use miniaturization, make things smaller to get control over them, and cameras kind of do that. I do that. When I was in the administrator's office, at many times I had a feeling of like, I could just pick some student up who's behaving badly from the camera and and put them in some kind of jail or whatever. So it did give a sense of control, I guess. Another example is the door window. Modern day schools are often designed with a door window. Next to the classroom door, you have a little window. This is a site of panoptic control. You can, from outside the classroom, you can observe the hallway outside. But it's also something that can easily be transgressed. And this is very interesting because it shows how elements of panoptic control easily become also elements of border transgression. An informal way of punishment that teachers often used was to put an annoying student for a few minutes outside of the classroom to tell them to leave for a few minutes. And if they really wanted to be annoying, what they would do is they would press their face against this door window. They would try to distract the other students in some ways. They would pull funny faces and whatever. So in this way, this door window could serve multiple purposes and could be reused for the annoying student to still claim some sort of space, some sort of presence in a classroom he was physically ejected from, where his claim to space was completely denied. Now, I'll compare the way that Innova treated their claims to hallway space with another school that I taught at, one in the outskirts, a way less diverse school, where they did not install cameras in the hallways. They didn't find a need to. They had much more control over their hallways. There was the cat and mouse game in the hallways was practically absent. Instead, in their hallways, they had lots of motivational posters. the hallways were lined with posters like, you always have to try your best, and you definitely have to speak Dutch here. So their claims to the hallways was not so much through panoptic control, but by, in the first instance, claiming praise through language and secularism. In Innova, if you spoke French in the hallways, teachers didn't really care that much. In this school, however, the most frequent reason for punishment was speaking another language than Dutch in the hallways, was speaking French in the hallways. Also, it was a school where the headscarf was banned. And this image is quite interesting, to be honest. It's like a poster. It says, here you can only speak Dutch. And it's interesting because it shows kind of these entangled effects. There is a smiley face, but the smiley face is in red, which is normally a color reserved for anger. So it's a bit confusing what to think about this. But the interesting thing about this school also was that I noticed much more of a sort of racial bias in the way that they performed educational triage, in the way that they decided which students would move on to higher levels and which were not allowed to move on to higher levels. I'm going to be careful in what I say because it is hard to like prove these things since I was only like a cursory observer for a year, I guess. But the interesting thing about this school, there were 600 students in this school. In the first year, there were 200. In the sixth year, the last year, there were 50. Of those 200, more than half were from racialized minorities. Of those 50 at the end, more than 90% were white Flemish people. So something had happened in there. In some way, people who moved from the city to the outskirts to this kind of school were redirected towards the city in some way. There was some kind of, something happened there. And I think that the way that struggles over the hallways take place have some kind of relationship with this. Okay. I'll have a quick look at the time to see if I have time for this.
We have
I'll
like
quickly over this.
minutes.
What up until now I've been trying to do is by focusing on struggles over space, my main purpose has been in breaking down subjectivation of schools and students. What often happens when a school is, when education equality is studied by sociologists especially, is that there is a high level of subjectivation of both students and schools. Meaning that, for example, they study a school and they go to separate students in native and non-native students. And they ask, this is, for example, a study that has been done in Belgium, where they ask children, how many of your friends are native and how many of your friends are non-native? This is very interesting because in that way, they presuppose that these children have the same idea of native and non-native as they themselves. It also presupposes that these are that these categories are mutually unintelligible, that you cannot be native and non-native at the same time, that there is no sort of go-between between those categories. This also happens with schools. Often schools are studied as if they're white schools and diverse schools, which I think if I show you these struggles that take place over space, it's not the case at all. Schools and students are made out of these struggles, are made out of these crazy entanglements between how a door window can become different things. And it's not really fair to then subjectify them as this is that or this is this. I think if anthropology is to have any value at all in debates on education equality, it is to show the inherent liveliness of the school, because the school is indeed alive. This was very noticeable during moments of educational triage, during the class councils at the end of examination periods, when teachers would discuss the examination results of students, where after effect, these discussions are held up as bred out of broad consensus, as very impartial affairs. But in reality, they are very, very heated discussions. I've seen crying, I've seen yelling, I've seen teachers shutting the door behind them when they left the building. At many times, it felt like the whole education system was about to collapse within those very discussions. And there was some kind of underlying realization that what was being done was not really reasonable at all. But whatever. The school, the essence of the school is a game of cats and mice. And this is also where I hit my border as a researcher teacher. I hit upon a border of backpacks. This was the hallway that I was teaching in. And now, at a certain point, some of the students who were a bit harder to deal with, what they would do during break time is they would put their backpack in front of my door as a way that they don't have to carry it, which was interesting because for them, it was also a way of testing the limits of their claim of control over the hallways And for me, and I felt annoyed because they were kind of imposing on my space. And they put their backpacks there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was in front of the door. It was annoying because I had to get over it. And I told them not to do it, but they still did it. And when they knew that I was getting annoyed, of course, they did it more, and it became sort of game where they would put it there, see if I came, and then if they saw me coming, they find some excuse or run away or whatever. I hit upon my limit as a researcher teacher. I was walled in, I was bordered in by backpacks. I'll give you one example that shows...
I'll have to interrupt you. I have to slowly interrupt you a bit. I don't know if you are done 2 more minutes, maybe?
Yeah, I can finish it. I can finish in 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so another example I will quickly show you is a student who wrote on the back of his exam that he will never forgive me because we had some disagreements about teaching method where I didn't really care about the textbook. He very much did care about the textbook. So I hit upon a limit what I can do as a researcher teacher. My intentions were also not pure. Whatever good intentions I had, they still ran up into limits. So that's why I decided to introduce some kind of ethnographic project with my students. In the end, 12 students participated. I gave a little workshop on ethnographic methods, mainly focusing on the idea of making the familiar strange, the strange familiar. I gave them notebooks as field notes and told them to write or draw things in this about what they think the school is. I didn't give them much instruction. I wanted to leave it open to them. And there were many interesting results out of this. To get the full results of this project, I'm afraid you'll have to read the article, but I'll give you one interesting result. And that is when I was teaching at a certain point, there was a case where a student was saying some meme or something, and another student yelled at them, you're very embarrassing. Mais tu t'es vraiment gênant, toi. You're very embarrassing. It was a word that they used that year very often, gênant, as a way to say that it's awkward. And then I responded by saying, I think all of you are gênant. I think all of you are embarrassing, which was kind of funny, but also hitting a bit against my limits of what I could say as a teacher. And suddenly, at the back of the class, I saw 2 girls pull out their notebook and start writing down what I had said. And well, it was interesting because I had been writing down names of students on the blackboard for a while now, and suddenly I was being written down and I was being named and I was being ethnographically observed. So the whole system was a kind of performative misfire. The whole system started to be reserved and turning around. And I think this was more of these occasions took place. This was the most interesting result of this research. If you want to read the whole working version of this article, I made a little QR code that you can scan to read it. There's also my contact information, and I'll leave the floor now to other people. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Arna. Thank you. And let us know about the QR code later as well. We'll have some time later as well. So that was Arna Vermassen. And now Anna Löfstrand will take the floor about finding me in the classroom. Well, you can just introduce yourself and, well, you have 20 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am also going to do the choreography of getting the PowerPoint up. So give me just a second. Share. Okay, can you see? Online, can you see? In person, you can see, but online, can you see? Hey, awesome. Thank you very much. Just put my recorder on quickly. My dad wasn't able to make it, and he really wanted to hear my speech, so I'm just gonna put my recorder on. Iasus, Kalimera, and Christos Anesti. That's about all the Greek that I know. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name, as I said before, is Anna Löfstrand. It's so wonderful to be with fellow anthropologists, educators, and educators of anthropology. I'm currently right in the middle of my really juicy PhD fieldwork. So it's nice to have a break from the bell schedules and lunch monitoring of a urban high school in Seattle, Washington, USA. So it's really great to be here. I'm usually an extemporaneous speaker, having a background in education, but I have a lot of specifics that I want to share with you today. So this is my first time actually reading a speech. So wish me luck. Here goes. In this talk, I propose an ethnographic epistemology and sensibility as a way of engaging intrinsic motivation, even in non-anthropology classes. I call this method stealth anthropology. Reflecting on theories of education, a project from my own high school classroom, as well as my current fieldwork, I propose the idea that ethnographic ways of thinking may serve us well as both anthropologists and as educators. I posit that through ethnographic epistemologies, students find themselves and meaning in classrooms. I'm looking forward to your feedback as well, because this idea is really in its early stages of development. I've just started thinking of this. So, why does a 14-year-old finish her project on time? Why does a 17-year-old come to class? As a teacher, 2 years in primary, a year with adults, and 6 years in secondary school, I found that high schoolers were the hardest to really just like get going, you know? I've often joked that teaching high school is essentially tricking teenagers into learning something against their will. A student must feel motivated to do her work. But motivation, especially intrinsic motivation, is a really slippery concept. Teachers often talk about sparks or biting points or eureka moments in classrooms. That framing, though, takes agency away from both teachers and learners and pins the love of learning on something ephemeral. Alfie Kohn, educational theorist and psychologist, argues that intrinsic motivation can be fostered and built up like a muscle. He concretizes the ephemerality of intrinsic motivation into the 3 C's: content, collaboration, and choice. Kohn warns us that a classroom based on rewards, from stickers to extra recess to grades. Actually, hold on, just so you can see it a bit more. Let me see if I can make this a little smaller. There we go. That's so you can see the whole thing. From stickers to extra recess to grades, this creates extrinsically motivated students. And crucially, that kind of motivation disappears the same moments the rewards do. When presented with relevant, engaging content, opportunities for collaboration, and meaningful, appropriate choices about their learning, intrinsic motivation grows. In my capacity as both an anthropologist and as an educator, I've thought a lot about why students do things in classrooms. Kohn's 3 C's resonate with me because of their situational adaptability. They aren't tricks, they're ways of being in a classroom, ways of being that mirror much of what we do as ethnographers. After finishing my BA in sociology and anthropology, it took me about 2 years to decide that what I really wanted to do was be a high school social studies teacher. My teacher training at the University of Washington in Seattle was an explicitly social justice-oriented program steeped in Freirean liberation pedagogy. For those unfamiliar with the work of Brazilian educational theorist Paulo Freire, he called upon us teachers to see students not as vessels to be filled with predetermined knowledge, but as people capable of their own independent thought and ultimately liberation, what he termed consentization, which I always have trouble pronouncing correctly, so please correct me if I'm wrong. At the UW, I learned ways of teaching that centered student voice, lived experience, and funds of knowledge, not content to pass on without reflection or critique. As teachers, our role was to provide roadmaps for self-actualization, liberation, and consentization. They're lofty goals, for sure. To put these theories into practice, I was lucky enough to study social studies methods with Dr. Walter Parker, now emeritus professor at the UW. Then as now, he championed a problem and project-based learning called PBL. With PBL, students become historians, investigators, geographers, and even ethnographers. This approach steers classrooms away from the banking model of education so derided by Freire, and ideally transforms classrooms into hives of intellectual activity. In our methods classes, Dr. Parker rallied us trainee teachers with the dictum that it was our role to provide a window to the world and a mirror to our students' lives. This windows and mirrors approach to teaching echoes the making the familiar strange and the strange familiar adage that I encountered during my BA in anthropology. As I delved more into the art and practice of teaching, I saw the ways I'd trained as an anthropologist as a methodological roadmap for creating an engaging classroom. My work in stealth anthropology had really begun at that point. So we have here a framework which incorporates Cohn's 3 C's, the windows and mirrors approach, and then making the familiar strange and the strange familiar. To illustrate this method of anthropological teaching by stealth, I want to talk about a project in which students became ethnographers of their own lives and their communities, the Snapshot Migration Project. Whew. So, my freedom to create my own social studies curriculum at Salish High School, not its real name, meant I could engage the 3 C's, windows and mirrors, and make the familiar strange in my own creative ways. Salish sits at the outskirts of Seattle, Washington, where the city proper breathes into the expansive suburbs. The neighborhood has a slightly rough around the edges, overlooked feel to it. Pedestrian hostile streets are lined with houses built originally as temporary accommodation for military personnel and their families during World War II. Street signs and buildings sport unchecked graffiti as well as intentional street art. Few people drive new cars and most accommodation is rented. The setting is inextricably linked to the success of this project. For the Snapshot Migration, I asked students to create a trifold brochure telling their own or their family's migration story. Seattle, located in the upper left-hand corner of the continental United States, has witnessed wave upon wave of both international and internal migration since the first Anglo-American settlers arrived in the mid-1800s. Drawn first by the lumber and salmon fishing trades, later by shipbuilding, aerospace, and the military, and most recently by tech giants like Microsoft and Amazon, middle and working class labor migrants came to Seattle to make money and stayed to make lives. Because of this short but rich history of migration to the city, Salish sits in a hyper-diverse neighborhood. That is to say, there's not one dominant minority group at the school. Over 20 home languages are spoken amongst the students, both in the student body, including Somali, Spanish, Vietnamese, Tongan, Amharic, and Khmer. We even had speakers of endangered languages such as Mam and Chuukese. This meant that the migration stories in the room were much richer and more diverse than you may find elsewhere. The snapshot is both inclusive and relevant content because all students, including Indigenous students, had a migration in their history to get them into my classroom, get them into our classroom, I should say. To launch the project in class, the students brainstormed what they knew about their personal migration story. At home, equipped with open-ended WH questions, who, what, where, when, why, and how, they corroborated their recollections, now framed as evidence, with family members. I provided questions such as, where's the first place you called home? Where did you first meet so-and-so? Or where was the first memory, what's the first memory you have of a place that you lived? Sensitive to the fact that many of my students lived in blended or multi-generational families, I asked students to speak with concerned adults at home. By expanding the field of possible interlocutors, I opened the door for aunties, uncles, older siblings, cousins, family friends, grandparents, and parents to tell the family migration story. Through these conversations, students practiced the ethnographic techniques of open-ended interviewing and life story elicitation. Even though it wasn't an anthropology class, students were doing anthropology. Then, on the due date in class, students shared their brochures with table mates while I went around the room checking for completion. Rather than turning in the assignments and moving on, their pamphlets became fodder for that day's class. After the table group share out, I had students do a short reading explaining the three main types of migration: economic, social, and political. I then asked students to move into a corner of the room which best represented the type or category of migration their family story told: economic, political, or social. In their designated corner, students explained to each other why the migration story fit the chosen category, citing evidence from their pamphlet. I noticed that often students who'd been in the same class since kindergarten were sharing and finding commonalities for the first time, like when a student from Vietnam, a student from El Salvador, and a student from Somalia realized their family were all political migrants. And as ethnographic experts in their own experience, they began to make connections and find resonances across diverse case studies. This project served as a launching point for a unit on global migration. Through this project, students became ethnographers of their families' experiences, as well as auto-ethnographers of their own. These trifold brochures also became tools for thinking and learning ethnographically in the classroom. By centering their work, the students' lived experience became a foundation for knowledge. By creating their own migration story pamphlet, the activity held up a mirror. By learning about migration stories of classmates and connecting these experiences to unit concepts and content, this activity became a window. Seeded throughout the project were moments of collaboration, where students worked with their table and brainstormed to brainstorm and to share, and they went home to speak to family. Students chose family members to talk to the events to highlight and the type of migration their family story represented. The content was relevant to all, due in large part to the demographics of the school. Spending a whole lesson sharing their migration snapshots with each other, we made the strange familiar and the familiar strange, with each student first turning in their own or their family's experiences into data and finding similarities across migrations from Tonga to Mexico, the Philippines to Ethiopia. The high turn-in rate spoke to buy-in from and the intrinsic motivation of the students. I typically did this project also early in the year as a way of building community, but also as a way for me to learn who was in my room. This case study is based on retroactive autoethnographic fieldwork as my own experience as a practitioner. I left Salish and Seattle in 2021, but I never really stopped thinking about it as a place. This year, I returned to Seattle to begin my fieldwork at Salish, looking at identity formation, belonging, and the future imagination of young people. I've been phenomenally lucky to be welcomed back into the school community. In these early stages of my fieldwork, I've been doing a lot more observing than participating, but old habits die hard. Former colleagues have pulled me in to do one-to-one readings, scribe student work on posters, pass out papers, and help run activities. With the skills of a teacher and the eyes of an anthropologist, I'm looking at the classroom differently. As I put this talk together, I realized I wanted an update or some kind of coda to this reflection on my own teaching practice, based on what I'm seeing through participant observation in the school. What I see now through active participant observation is there's a different kind of ethnography going on in the school, that of the teacher. As I walk through the hallways and wander around the classrooms as a researcher, I see the care and attention teachers give to the backgrounds, lives, and experiences of their students. A whole chapter in my book, in my thesis, could be about the way posters, artwork, and student work on classroom walls make students feel. Another could be about the small, short, but powerful conversations teachers have when they lead down and say a variation to a student of, "Hey, are you okay? Is there something you want to tell me? Did you eat breakfast today?" These questions are necessary because at schools like Salish, teachers must know their students. Institutional abandonment across all aspects of life often sets students up for resentment and resistance to institutions like school. To counter that, a school culture steeped in Freirean pedagogy centers student voice and experience. Salish teachers, by and large, abhor the banking sage-on-the-stage method of teaching. To help me sort through my new ideas, I asked two expert Salish English literature teachers, Ingrid and Anne, also not their real names, whose classes I've been spending time with, why students do their work. Ingrid brought up ideas of peer pressure and habituation. Seeing their classmates all working together on something makes a student feel the need to do it as well, which is familiar action because most students have been in school their whole lives. She also pointed out that with new robust cell phone plan in place, doing work is a pretty good alternative to just staring into space. I think Ingrid is really underselling what's happening in her classroom, however. I reframe Ingrid's peer pressure and habituation in terms of Cohn's 3 C's. Ingrid opens every day in class with a do now task, which requires critical thinking and inference, which sparks curiosity and a desire to know more. Her lessons require group work, collaboration, and reliance on each other. She barely sits as she teaches, moving around the room, checking in on students multiple times during a 90-minute block period. Her lessons often require students to move around the class as well. Her students know that knowledge is something built and not dictated in her class. They need to show up every day to be part of the creation process. Essays and assignments have multiple open-ended prompts, and projects must demonstrate critical engagement with class material. Ingrid's students know they will be held accountable for learning, not just their participation, which creates an intrinsic desire to be part of the active learning process. When I asked Anne why she thinks students do work in her classroom, she focused on mutual respect. She painted a picture of a classroom environment where students want to spend time and do the work. They even come into her room and do work for other classes. They know that when they're having a bad day, Anne's room is a safe place. She builds on this through mutual recognition, respect, and genuine care for the students in her room. She told me, I think kids just know when someone doesn't respect them. Like, even if it's not blatant, it's a feeling. And then they're like, if you're not respectful to me, why should I be respectful to them? To convey the respect she holds for them, Anne speaks to her students like equals, like people. She has a remarkable and seemingly natural way of holding their concerns about school, dating, sports, jobs, and the looming idea of the future gently but firmly. She doesn't belittle their worries or quotidian dramas. She listens without judgment to their complaints about other teachers and manages to provide an empathetic ear without being unprofessional. I've seen her spend 20 minutes reading one-to-one with a student who's struggling with work for another class, and then turn around and kind-heartedly tease a late arrival who comes in with a takeaway coffee. Anne sees her students as people, with lives, with worries, and not as empty vessels to fill or bodies to control. Here I draw on Cohn's fourth and perhaps most important C, care. Children, he says, who are cared for are better at taking risks, trying new things, and making mistakes, all essential parts of learning. Being taken seriously leads them to respecting and taking others seriously. To be shown care is to become caring. So, to quote Cohn directly, in order to be a caring person, a teacher must first be a person. Teachers like Ingrid, Anne, and even me on my best days are people with students. We practice empathy, demonstrate care, show respect, and model risk-taking. Through that being of a person, we create a space for mutual recognition and of humanity and recognition of shared struggle, what Paul Gilroy calls conviviality. And isn't that ultimately the work of the ethnographer? To respect, to empathize, understand, map out, learn the ways in meaning making, to mutually recognize, to care for and about a community enough to spend years living and working with them to tell their stories. I add here to the cornucopia of resonating axioms, one from a math teacher at Salish, Erin, again, not her real name. Classroom culture eats curriculum for breakfast. This witticism underscores a foundational principle. A classroom is a community, and a community develops a culture. A classroom with a culture of care, mutual recognition, and respect is the best foundation for a classroom of learners rather than empty vessels. Educators in all roles must create classrooms that are safe. Anthropologists, luckily, are trained to do this. We can bring our ethnographic epistemology and anthropological training into our classes, if, in my case, only by stealth. As I said, I'm in the early days of this deliciously befuddling fieldwork, and my brain is expanding at about 1 million miles an hour. What I'm coming to understand is this idea in its most embryonic form, is that it's not just student ethnographers that fill classrooms with intrinsically motivated students, but teacher ethnographers as well. Both Anne and Ingrid's comments remind me that classrooms where students feel emboldened to take intellectual risks, share their own selves, and ultimately do the work have to feel safe. Students have to feel known. They have to feel cared for. The few minutes to crouch down next to a student and find out what they had or didn't have for breakfast, what they like to do after school, and if everything is okay at home, builds a foundation for content and collaboration and choice. Intrinsic motivation grows through a sense of being known, mutual respect, mutual recognition, and active work of teachers to understand the lives and meaning making of their students. Ultimately, and it may be a pretty hackneyed phrase, a classroom is a community with all its rhythms, complexities, and ephemerality. A classroom has a culture. We as educators in anthropology need to do what we were trained to do as anthropologists, learn about our students' lives, their dreams, their ambitions, and their interests. Equipped with that knowledge, we can create opportunities for collaboration, provide relevant content and choice, hold up mirrors, open windows, make the familiar strange and the strange familiar. And it's our responsibility to lay a foundation steeped in the 4 C's, content, collaboration, choice, and care, so the classrooms can unfurl like the villages, cities, and communities where we do our ethnographic work. As we do all these things in tandem, we model an ethnographic epistemology, a way of being, learning, and knowing that our students can emulate. in their journeys through life in their journeys through education, and hopefully as lifelong learners. Ευχαριστώ. If you want to see who I cited, here it is, but mostly just me.
Thank you so much. It was really as if you guys did something together, as you know, like it was very, very complimentary what you guys both presented, one after the other. So thank you, and let's suggest that Joseph takes the floor. Joseph, can you hear us? Yes. Perfect.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So please introduce yourself briefly. We are curious to know who you are as well, and then you can start. In terms of timing, perfect. So
yeah, great. And I guess I'll share my screen, right? Can you see that? Great, thanks. Let me just sort out my screen here as well. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So hi everybody. Hi from Cambridge. I wish I could be there in Lesbos. It looks lovely. I hope you're all having a good time. And hope that we can end up meeting someday somewhere else. I'm doing my PhD in the Department of Social Anthropology here at Cambridge. And I really enjoyed the two papers just now, and I think there's a lot of resonance. So I'm really glad to be here. All right, let me get going. So I'm going to be talking about my experience of 2 stints of teaching digital anthropology courses in Chinese high schools. And by sharing some of those reflections, I'm trying to get at 3 kind of big questions, which is, firstly, how could we rethink introduction to anthropology courses in general, in both pre-university and university settings? I'm also wondering about how the case of a pre-university classroom can inform our approaches to the public communication of anthropology more broadly, right? Like we're seeing more and more public-oriented books introducing anthropology to wider audiences, and that's wonderful. But some of those strategies were effective, I think, in my case, but some of them weren't. And I think the pre-university classroom case can kind of make us think more about those strategies. And then thirdly, and this is the thing I think really resonates with those 2 papers just now, is what happens when the classroom becomes a field site, right? Like teaching in itself generates its own kind of ethnographic data, whether on the part of the teacher or indeed of the students, as we just heard. And I think this is an increasingly relevant question for anthropology, and it demands a particular kind of reflexivity. So I'm really looking forward to discussing that with everybody. So yeah, let me introduce the case study a little bit. So this was part of an outreach initiative organized by Harvard University, my alma mater, where kind of 20 of us visited a Chinese public school, and we led a 7-part seminar of our own design. So the project was trying to give the students a taste of liberal arts education and what it's like to, you know, study different courses from disciplines that are completely different all at the same time. So I was teaching my courses on anthropology, but there was also courses on like game theory or like journalism, entrepreneurship, stuff like that. So that's the context in which the students was taking this. In 2024, my course was called Tech for Social Good, and 2025, it was called Open Up Your Brain Hole, the Anthropology of Artificial Intelligence. So this phrase, open up your brain hole, it's a translation of a Chinese sci-fi idiom, which is associated and kind of known amongst my students with this kind of sense of trailblazing curiosity of exploring new worlds. So that's where that comes from. And that title kind of paired with my decision to center the course around AI. That was a strategic, like evangelistic move, just because I knew that the students would be really enamored with AI, and they kind of have these kind of Elon Musk-esque sympathies for reprogramming humanity and stuff. So I kind of wanted to capture that quite problematic fetishization of AI that I knew that they would have, and then kind of trap them and get them into anthropology instead. And I'll talk more about how that worked out. And yeah, I advertised the course as I write here, so how both classic and cutting edge research by anthropologists can help us make sense of the politics, cultures, and ethics of artificial intelligence. I had about 40 students in total each year. They're mostly 16 to 18-year-olds, but occasionally as young as 13 or 14. And the course was a discussion-based course, and it was bilingual, so we held it in both English and Chinese. Most students weren't familiar with social anthropology before. They thought it was like Indiana Jones, bones, Homo sapiens, evolution, that kind of thing. And I mean, that also fits into the Chinese context where social anthropology as we know it is not available as a university course. So, you have these kind of approximates of folklore studies or ethnology. But yeah, really, social anthropology is very new. And this came up in both of the papers before, this idea of making the familiar unfamiliar and the unfamiliar familiar, right? And I'm going to go into that a little bit more. But yeah, I was trying to kind of promise them that anthrovision, as Gillian Tett calls it, would be an important life skill for all of them, especially the aspiring engineers and techies and entrepreneurs amongst them. Yeah, so let me give a taste into the day-by-day contents of the courses. So it's through these topics that I introduced anthropology to them. So you can see there's a little bit of overlap between the 2 years. The structure of the course was that I'd begin each class with either a big concept in anthropology, like ritual, or I would introduce them to a notable anthropological monograph and kind of like summarize it. And then we would see how those ideas apply or how we could adapt those ideas to apply to various AI phenomena. So I don't know if any folks have read Nick Seaver, who's an ethnographer of algorithms, but we kind of looked at how he uses anthropological theory to talk about algorithmic systems, or we looked at Graham Jones's study of magicians in Paris to think critically about the magical culture of chatbots and corporations like OpenAI. So that was kind of the move I was trying to make. Picture break. Let's have a look at. Yeah. So this is me in action in the classroom. So yeah, I mean, it meant that the course was often just really fun. So we watched mukbangs together, for example. So for those who aren't familiar, mukbangs are kind of like online eating performances. And this was a really interesting anthropological exercise because I was trying to get them, as we watched it together, to think about how mukbangs aren't just a performance of eating food, but also a performance of gender and class and power. And as you might be able to make out, these are all Chinese examples, and I'm about to go into that. Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning, I think this experience of teaching digital anthropology there offers me some broader reflections on how we communicate anthropology to new audiences. So I think the recent public-oriented anthropology books, in the bookstores, they often replicate the logic of most freshman-level introduction to anthropology courses, which is that you start from the early days of the discipline with like Franz Boas and Margaret Mead, and then you just kind of work from there. And you go through all the schools and all the kind of names of anthropological theories. Some of my students had actually taken anthropology taster courses because they're available online by like, Yale and Harvard and whatever. And that's kind of what turned them off. They very quickly lost interest because it takes such a long time to do justice to the discipline's history and to then affirm its relevance. And then the other thing I'd say is that public-oriented anthropology publications sometimes fall into a trap of implying that anthropology is like marginal, indulgent, separate from the real world. It's just like studying cultural meanings. And then saying, but actually anthropology is useful for the real world. And that move, I can see why they've done it, but it's kind of problematic because it supposes that anthropology was ever separate from the real world, which it's obviously not. So that kind of rhetorical move that I think is really out there at the moment didn't work in the classroom. And so I thought it was actually more effective to start from the urgent issues in the world today. So, for example, the relationship between AI and the environment, and then to showcase anthropology's relevance by exposing the students to recent academic monographs, right? To really just celebrate how diverse academic anthropology is, right? So, we looked at ethnographies of virtual reality or ethnographies of space scientists, ethnographies of magicians, to show how anthropological studies take a big question and then rethink it from the perspective of people's everyday lives. So yeah, going back to the picture before, so a key pedagogical strategy in this course was that I taught specifically Chinese case studies, even though I'm British and they're all Chinese. Now, partially this was because my own research focus is China, so that's the context I know best, and I learn a lot as well when I'm teaching about it. But I was also teaching entirely Chinese case studies because I was teaching them in 2 Chinese tech megacities, right? Like these courses happened in Shanghai and Shenzhen. And the students there are like really quick to celebrate tech innovations like food delivery apps or, because they're really convenient, but they're less disposed and equipped to think critically about those innovations. So I intentionally chose Chinese case studies, like digital media phenomena that they were already familiar with, or, that they've at least heard of before. So particular influencers or video games. And the point of that was, you have this sense then of a foreigner who is teaching content that is familiar to them from their own cultural worlds. So basically I could then illustrate the spirit of anthropology being making the familiar unfamiliar. And it also allowed them to make more direct links between things they see day to day, like TikTok trends, in relation to the anthropological concepts that we were discussing. And so what was interesting here is then how students kind of interpreted anthropology in their own ways. And I wonder how other folks here kind of have experienced this in their own settings. Like after they kind of figure out what anthropology is, how do they articulate that, right? Or how do they then imagine what anthropology could mean for them? Like, so one interesting thing is that they often invoked this proverb from the ancient Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi of the frog at the bottom of the well. And the story goes that there's a frog at the bottom of the well who's like really happy, leaping about, jumping in puddles. But he's so happy because he doesn't realize that there's a much greater, more complex world to be understood beyond the well, right? And so they started all saying, oh, like a life without studying anthropology is a bit like being a frog at the bottom of the well, right? So that was kind of an interesting kind of native articulation, if you like, of anthropology from the students. And so I think the lesson here might be the importance of incorporating students' own life experiences and daily media consumption into their understandings of anthropology from the start, which again, I think resonates with the fantastic paper we just had now. Related to that, as I mentioned, my own research is on China, and so it's worth noting that recent public-oriented anthropological works have turned experiences of teaching in the classroom into a kind of ethnographic data. And I actually figured, folks here actually have more examples, and I'd be really happy to hear them. But 2 examples I can think of is Angela Garcia's The Way That Leads Among the Lost, because she kind of talks about how experiences in the classroom and political moments on the Stanford campus, she incorporates those moments into her ethnography of addiction treatment centers in Mexico in a really interesting way. And then similarly, it's not like a hardcore ethnography, but Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, kind of anthropological. It does talk about her experiences of teaching in the classroom and sort of centering students' experiences in order to explain what she means by the doppelganger. So I similarly did this. So my actual research is about influencers and the live streaming industry in China. But the people I work on are, their target audience is kind of like older Chinese people in like lower tier cities, the rural areas. So it's kind of like the opposite of the demographic of my students, which were like mostly middle-class kids from Chinese big cities. So it was just really interesting showing them material from my fieldwork and then getting their reactions, because their reactions in themselves became a kind of ethnographic data for me. And so the classroom is such an interesting and fertile space for this, but it also demands a kind of ethical consideration and a particular kind of reflexivity that I think would be really worth kind of unpacking and discussing in the future. Yeah, let me just share a few more quick fire, kind of random things about how this anthropology course kind of came together and how it became compelling to the students. And I wonder these might be shareable strategies or sort of comparative cases for other folks working in other settings. One simple thing was just like an aesthetic syllabus, you know, like as I say, I kind of was trying to evangelize anthropology by kind of capturing their fetishization of AI. So it was kind of fun to just create this syllabus which kind of similarly fetishized these kind of techie aesthetics. But that's really what got them into it, you know. So that worked out. Hey, like research-based assignments. So I really wanted the assignments to encourage them to think about doing their own anthropological research straight away. And so the briefs were to just identify some phenomenon that they think is really interesting but kind of understudied, and then to design an ethnographic project, so, you know, supposing they could get all the necessary permissions and whatever. And it was just really interesting to see, just after a few days, how they had kind of captured the ethnographic disposition in their minds and come up with a kind of project. So somebody did a mini project on like the different voices on driving navigation apps. That was really fun. Or like a study of delivery drivers. Somebody did their own mukbang, like filmed a mukbang of themselves as an autoethnography, which was really wild. So yeah, I mean, assignments are an interesting thing to think about here. In order to kind of make it come across why fieldwork matters and why we do ethnography, sometimes I would just kind of crassly demonstrate methodologies in practice. So for example, to show why interviews are limited, I would just ask somebody a really huge question, like, how Chinese do you feel from a scale of 1 to 10? Or I'd give them a survey, something like that. Now, of course, like quantitative methods and interviews can be really useful to ethnography. And it was kind of a crass simplification, but it was kind of worth making the point of why participant observation continues to be so central to anthropology. And I think the lesson here is actually that is really intuitive, and actually just kind of testing it out on the students made that come across clear. And then finally, yeah, the spatial configuration of the classroom was relevant to how students experienced their introduction to anthropology. So I mandated a no technology in a class rule. We sat in a horseshoe shape without desks to just promote discussion. And that was all very new and exciting to them. And I think that experience kind of really embedded into how they then came to kind of figure anthropology in their minds. So yeah, so developing this experience into an ethnographic example for us, yeah, the question I'm left here is just, you know, like, where do we go from here, right? Like, not only for teaching anthropology in the pre-university classroom, but also at the university level and in public outreach. You know, how can we think differently about Anthro 101 courses? You know, could it be that the Introduction to Anthropology course is framed around AI or like gaming, K-pop, TikTok, clubbing and nightlife, and then you delve down into the discipline, you know, so kind of doing an inverse move to the way that it's normally done. And also, you know, what risks might such an approach have? And I also just want to mention that the students, I kind of briefly alluded to this, the students who were able to attend this basically Harvard summer camp were often financially aided, but in a lot of cases, their parents at least had to pay a bit. And as I mentioned before, they were kind of mostly middle class from big cities. And that's to say nothing of the fact that the whole premise of this initiative was Harvard students coming to China to spread the liberal arts, and that's kind of problematic. So yeah, these are some questions to consider as to how this, you know, this example can kind of scale up into something bigger. But this is my last point, is my ultimate takeaway, though, is that if we can better harness introductions to anthropology and find answers to some of those questions, my takeaway is that there's just a lot to be optimistic about with our discipline's future, you know, because actually I think when we have the chance to communicate anthropology and sort of allow students to get to know what it is, they really fall in love with it. And I just thought to share a few quotes from their course evaluations. I didn't pay them to say any of this, and it's genuine feedback they didn't know that I would read. But I mean, a couple of highlights here for me was, the way of ethnographic thinking is now very much embedded in my mind. I love that. And, this idea of actually ordinary people in their everyday lives as being a genuine and meaningful source of knowledge. I think that kind of really shook them, that kind of rocked their worlds. And I was really glad to hear that. And another one is how one student found that anthropology allowed them to feel deeply about humanity and a shared hope for it, and that just kind of, that just kind of really resonated with me. And I'd actually like to end with this last line from a student's assignment. And she ended her essay saying, in a word, the warmth of a society has never been determined by the advancement of technology, but by those clumsy yet genuine connections between people. And yeah, I mean, for me, the sincerity and speed with which the students absorbed anthropology through the lens of AI indicated that as we reflect on how to teach and communicate anthropology better, we can also believe that there is something deeply intuitive and compassionate and instinctive about the anthropological project. And by tapping into those qualities, I really do think that the discipline's future can be very bright. So thanks so much. I'm so glad to be sharing this panel with these fantastic speakers. And yeah, wish I could be there in person, but please do get in touch anytime. I'd love to connect. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you very much, Joseph. It was really insightful. So we are 7. We have plenty of time for Q&As. I don't know if any of you would like to add anything, because especially the first one, Adna, was a little bit more limited in terms of time, maybe. So, if some of you would like to first address any extras, and then pass to the Q&A. I have a few questions myself, by the way, but it's yeah. Let's see if anyone else has something to add first.
5 minutes left. Okay. Just to clarify.
5. Okay, I see that. Okay, there's no point to. Well, okay, I will first ask some questions addressing to each and every one of you specifically, just to give a hint, and then, well, given the little time we've got left. Okay, so Arne, for instance, okay, you are a Dutch-speaking Belgian. Just to put some context into this, I've worked a lot with well, people who are applicants of international protection, and I'm very familiarized with what's going on in Flanders and Brussels and Wallonia when it comes to trends and quotas and so on. It's very, very confusing. So would you say actually that it works better when it comes to Flanders and Brussels system? I'm genuinely asking, I'm really sincerely asking this question, because there is the stereotype that in Flanders things are much better, but there are a lot of trends leading to children being, well, students being less inclined to interact within a Dutch-speaking I also have other questions, but anyway, I will, when it comes to Anne, yeah, when it comes to Anna, you also refer to stealth, and I wanted to ask you also how you link this to project-based learning that you talked about. So, of course, first, and your coda, which I didn't quite get. I don't know if you wanted to make a point about the wow effect in the end of a teaching classroom, of a teaching methods or course that finishes this or that way. I didn't quite get this one. Then finally, about Joseph, again, I have a lot of questions. Well, my main question personally, if you like, is how far can you identify with the way AI defines anthropology for the students? So when they actually have to use AI any way they had to use it, do you feel like they're able to rely on it to get a grasp of it in real terms? So these are a few first questions, and well, let's stick to the 5 minutes or 10 minutes, let's say, and then we'll see, because time is, yeah.
Okay, so I'll start, I guess. If I understood your question right, it was about whether Dutch language education works better, or because you got away at the end a little bit, so I had a bit of difficulty understanding the whole question.
So during your presentation, among others, to the fact that there is an inclination of students and therefore probably the folks to send them to Dutch-speaking schools, which is a trend indeed. But you have a lot of experience in Dutch-speaking schools, and as a Dutch speaker as well, you might distinction between the kinds, the way the dynamics are formed within a Dutch-speaking school classroom, and therefore the premises of the school. You also gave a lot of examples of, well, let's say post-colonial relic, if you like. So in that sense, I mean, roughly, as a person who has been working in this context, how would you define, for example, a Dutch-speaking classroom and Dutch-speaking premises to a French or more, well, Brussels, Wallonian environment, of course, depending on your own insight and knowledge, because, well, this is a very broad question, but for me personally, it's pretty interesting because there are a lot of issues in the distinction between a Dutch-speaking and a French-speaking school. And there are lots who are actually going towards a Dutch-speaking environment, and they opt out of a French-speaking classroom. Of course, I also wanted to ask a few other things. But yeah, well,
we could always talk later in Brussels, I guess, as well. But yeah, I think Dutch language education in Brussels is a very interesting phenomenon in many ways. I've never worked in a French-speaking school, and I've also never worked in a school that is not in some way connected to Brussels. So that's a bit of a gap in my knowledge. But I think what was especially interesting to me in the 3 schools that I worked in is that Dutch language education creates a very stark racial difference in a way. In a sense that in these schools, and Innova was different in this, and that's also why I used it as an example. In these schools, all the inferior positions tend to be occupied by racialized minorities, while all the superior positions, teachers, headmasters, whatever, tend to be occupied by white Flemish people. And this creates very interesting interactions. It's a way of connection, but also a way of reestablishing these boundaries between population groups, where, for example, in these schools, you were not allowed to speak French within the school itself, except teachers and students when they were talking to the cleaning personnel. Then they were allowed to speak French, because the cleaning personnel were also from racialized minorities. They spoke French, so then French was allowed. So this creates very interesting and weird entanglements. Also, what I often noticed in these schools is that teachers who themselves are racialized have a lot of difficulty in accessing teaching corps of this school. Interestingly, I also talked to many teachers who were working in different schools within Brussels and its surroundings, and also teachers were working in Nova but came from different schools. It was also interesting how they described that, so the teaching personnel is in most cases 90-100% white Flemish, and if there was a new teacher who happened to be a racialized minority, they didn't tend to stay long. They stayed a year or two. There were all kinds of problems. There were all kinds of conflicts. These conflicts were never really about race itself, but somehow there seemed to be always some kind of problem, and these people never really felt welcome within this course, because there were these weird entanglements between population groups, inferiority, superiority, and I think that's really defines what a Dutch language school is in and around Brussels. And of course, the fact that parents send their children often to these schools with the idea of gaining more access in the country is also interesting in that case. Often also, and I think I forgot the author, but I read this in an article recently, also because the Flemish dominance in the economy around Brussels has often bullied people into speaking Dutch, and it's not so much a choice of more advancement. It's often more of a requirement not to be artificially put in a backward situation where you have to apply for a job and you have to know Dutch for this job, although you're probably not used Dutch at all during the job, just as a way of, like putting in the boundaries, city, countryside, and so on.
Yeah.
We're getting kicked out in exactly 3 minutes, so should we give a minute to Anna and then a minute to Joseph to address their questions? And then, very sorry, the audience will not have time to do any questions right now, but please do network with each other online and in person over here. And you have the speaker's email, so you can get back to them if you have any personal questions. Sorry, guys.
I'm really good at talking fast.
And Anna, if you wanted to refer to the terms.
Didn't catch that, I'm afraid. So I'll answer the questions that I heard you ask before. Stealth anthropology, project-based learning, right? We turn students into geographers, historians, this kind of stuff. I came from a background of anthropology. I was the only person in my teacher training who came from a background in anthropology. For me, doing projects that were more ethnographic and more anthropological in scope was a way for me to, I found really as a successful way to get students engaged and engage this intrinsic motivation. But like my friend Arne here, I'm gonna say, read my article that's coming out soon about it. So, the other thing that kind of coda, I just wanted to say, I left the school thinking like, wow, what I had done with students was what was really powerful and what I had fostered in my students. I'm now getting the opportunity, just as somebody who's pinging around different classrooms as an ethnographer, as a researcher, to see what other teachers are doing. So I think I had this premise going in of like, oh, we do this through curriculum. We create these really engaged students through curriculum. We also do it through having really engaged teachers who kind of demonstrate a lot of care about their kids. And I'm not trying to propose ethnography as like a theory of everything or whatever, but like the way that we are as ethnographers does those things. It demonstrates care and shows mutual respect. So it's like there's this ethnographic something happening on all these different levels. That's kind of my summary, and I'll pass it to Joseph.
Yeah, all right, great.
Okay, thank you.
can't wait to talk more about that, by the way, as in I really want to hear more. Yeah, so I think, again, I also didn't fully grasp the question, but I think it was like, how do we deal with the fact that the students are just using loads of AI, right? Like, as in they're just using ChatGPT all the time. Yeah, I mean, so I was pretty strict on just being like, don't use it, like at all. And I kind of freaked some of the students out because they were working on their projects in class, and I could just see in the corner of their screen that they were using ChatGPT. And so I was like, I just have this special sense. I can smell AI, you know, like in the classroom. And then they were like really freaked out. They're like, whoa, this guy really can smell AI. So yeah, so I just was like, don't use it. I was like, you know, such a core lesson from this anthropology of AI course is that it's like we weren't designed, like we're not really meant to be like engaging with this stuff. And we did look a lot at the dark side of AI, such as, you know, environmental, you know, destruction that it's causing with all of these data centers. So I was just like, you know, at your age, we really should be, you should be able to be self-sufficient with your brain. And that was my kind of hardcore orthodox approach. But actually, just really briefly, I think an interesting question for AI and anthropology more broadly is that sometimes the kind of popular fetishization of AI can mean that fieldwork becomes even more strange or unintelligible. So when I was doing my fieldwork in China, and as I was saying earlier, I work with kind of like older people, and there was kind of a 60-year-old woman who loves using ChatGPT for everything in China. And she was like, you need 4 years to write your thesis about X, Y, and Z. And she was like, you know, like ChatGPT could do it in like 2 minutes. Um, and do you know what I'm saying? So it's in like, it's just an interesting thing that I feel like many more of our interlocutors, whether it be in schools, but also just out there, are, you know, that's kind of, there's going to be a reckoning with the whole point of ethnography, which is long-term, sort of close on the ground engagement. Right. And so I tried to communicate with that with the students. You know, I think in an age of AI, and the fact that they're all using it all the time, you know, anthropology becomes really meaningful when it's used to affirm long-term, genuine, organic engagement with actual people. It's a little bit like the fast food, slow food movement, you know, where it's just like, actually, we should cook things for a long time, you know, and like really take our time over the food. As in, I think there's kind of an analogy there with anthropology. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
We really need to wrap this up. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Katerina, for being able to share this, even though you were not here with us physically. If your next panel is in the auditorium room, stay here either physically or online. Otherwise, go back to your program and you will find out in which link you have to click or in which room you have to go on. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, everyone.
Hello to the people online. Can you hear me?
Yes. No.
Could you just make a quick test if my audio plays on Zoom? Could I share my screen for a while?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if I can share the audio as well.
Το καλά, αλλά εντάξει, άξιζε. Αλλά,
okay. Yeah.
You hear it?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Secondo me il nostro parte.
Maybe we can.
Okay, good morning. Hi.
Γεια σου.
Hello.
Good morning. Καλημέρα. Yes. Yes.
That we do have some presentations online. So just checking if everyone is here. Do you have Juana Maria?
Yes, I am.
Here. Okay, thank you. Katerina Vasilaki is on site. Gerasenia Papalexiou.
She's online or online, but no camera, no audio.
Okay. Gerasenia Papalexiou, can you hear us? And Elena.
Yes. Yes, online from Italy. Yes.
Everybody's here. Okay, I think that
okay, too.
Can go on. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. We are on a panel on anthropology and its public presence. So I will give the floor to Juana Maria Kalin. She's going to present the paper Teaching Voices, the Red Dress Project as a collaborative communication artifact for social reflection.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction.
Thank you.
One moment, it seems that, one moment. Okay. I have to come back in 2 seconds, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, but I didn't make I couldn't share my screen, and this is why I had to quit and reopen. Now I think can you see? Can you hear?
Yes, I see.
Thank you so much. Okay, so good morning. I'm in Bucharest, in a very cloudy and chilly Bucharest. I wish I was there with you, and somehow I'm bringing the weather from Mediterranean here with this presentation. I have research that I've been doing this year about a project called Red Dress. And I have been studying it about its presence in social media and online. And it's about how this project became a collaborative communication artifact.
So why this research? It was a very interesting discovery for me because it is a medium from my point of view of collective memory and emotional labor and civic participation. And I started to question some of the things related to visibility of the women and communicating feminine values, about the way of cultural activism and transnational civic participation, and also about the collaborative artistic garment playing in general reflection and conversation about social themes. As a theoretical framework, I have here some of the key concepts that I have been that guided me in this research, related to collaborative and participatory art, symbolic and interpretative anthropology, digital and media circulation. What's happening, because in these times of digital presence, the textiles are even are increasing in their visibility. Also in Romania, we have a lot of Facebook groups of women that are suing. I also did my PhD thesis on how Facebook group revived, in fact, the Romanian blouse, and the women started to relearn this ancient tradition online, and it was outside the borders of Romania, because it was basically from everywhere in the world were its members. So somehow in the last years, the embroidery has become a medium of cultural expression, of tradition, of identity preservation, of heritage and cultural values, and also a mean of personal storytelling, in which each person that does this technique is trying to convey a personal message or a personal story, and is somehow this is why the title was for my paper was Teaching Voices, because somehow while people are women and people, in fact, not only women are making the embroidery, the people that are doing this are in fact stitching their own story and their own beliefs. And this project, Red Dress Embroidery Project, offers a unique case from my point of view about participatory art, and I'm going to detail it. So what's about this project? I don't know how many of you know about it. It's a project started in UK by an artist, and it's a dress that traveled the world and was embroidered, has pieces of embroidery from all around the world in 51 countries, and almost around 380 embroiderers. Most of them are women or girls. There are also some men and some non-binary. These are the information taken from the website. This project raised my attention because it had a very short appearance also in the Romanian mass media, because a woman was also participating in this project, and somewhere on that dress there is a flower that was embroidered by her. So I wanted to see what happened during these years, a 14-year project. So the dress traveled around the world in pieces or as a whole, so that right now it became an object of expositions, of workshops, and also, as you will see, books and other means of promotion. What I have been doing in my research, I have been gathering all posts from Facebook and Instagram from 2009 to 2023. And I was following the hashtags Red Dress Project and Red Dress Embroidery. From these, I extracted the hashtags that were used together with the red dress, and I was doing the qualitative analysis. What we see here are the frequency of the hashtags that were extracted. And of course, the main hashtag was Red Dress Project, but also we have embroidery art, we have women empowerment, we have global collaboration, textile art, cultural heritage, and artivism, which is very interesting, a declination from activism, but combined with art. Handmade stories and stitching together and crafting change. These were the main hashtags that I extracted from the corpus. Of course, I did the thematic analysis based on discourse categories, and I was combining the thematic groups of the hashtags with the discourse analysis, so that for each category, we matched the groups and we analyzed the function. Thematic groups of project related and geography and time and process, and also there are some other, as you will see, there were included in the informative and descriptive category. And as you can see, there are some examples. We have also activism and advocacy category with the thematic groups feminism and women and activism and justice. And also we have art and craft thematic group, inspirational visionary. Here are the thematic groups that I was mentioning earlier, and also the number of unique hashtags that were used for each thematic group, and also the total mentions. As you can see, the most used thematic theme was the project related, the ones that is related to the fabric, to the tools, to the craft itself. About the project, sorry, this was about art and craft. The project related, about what's happening in the project, that the dress was traveling, or was a documentary was made, and things like this. The second is art and craft, about the details of the craft. Geography and location, it's another thematic group that was had a lot of mentions, because everywhere the dress was traveling, it had hashtags. And it's interesting to see that there are in fact not so many unique hashtags, but there were somehow the same places or the same countries that were mentioned, so that the work to be promoted. The community and participation, and as you can see, at artist and identity, authorship, there are only 6 unique hashtags, and I will go back to show you why. Because here we have the name of the artist, Kirsty MacLeod. And she was mentioned in different ways, but she was the one that is the author of the project. All the artists that contributed to the dress were mentioned in the community and participation phase, and there are a lot of posts in which artists are mentioned. There is the explained the cultural heritage and everything that they are bringing to this project. Here is a little bit of distribution of the hashtags, most of them informative, according to the discourse and categories. The most of them were informative and descriptive, then participatory and community driven, and then emotional and testimonial. And here you can see some of the posts from the Instagram, where women were coming together to do their part of the embroidery. An important part of the research was related to the museum side, in which the dress traveled and was exposed. In the end, after it was finalized, it traveled to be exposed. And this was, in fact, something that was the center of this analysis, because somehow, in the end, the work of 14 years and over 350 people became an artifact. And I wanted to see how many museums were mentioned, and this is the frequency and the names. But also here there is something that I have to explore further, because there were some places in which there were not museums. For example, there were chapels in which they were exposing the dress, but the function was the same, to have an exposition. So this is something that I have to clear myself if I will go back to the corpus and to redo this analysis. This is an image.
4 minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you. I will finish. Thank you. This is, for example, the image from Pittsburgh, where it was exposed together with the chronology of the project. So basically, what was the social media discourse has two primary poles: the documentation and dissemination, and also the inspiration and interpretation. In the picture, you can see here the exposition, the exhibition in a chapel, which I was mentioning before. As a conclusion, there are some main messages that came out of this analysis about the ritual practice, about cultural activism. And what is the most important is that the embroidery work can be seen as a museum artifact, embodying collective memory and women's emotional labor. Because when you are showing this kind of piece in a museum or in an exhibition, it's not just a piece of cloth. It brings also the stories and also the work. And in this way, the whole tradition and the whole craft receives another meaning and gets another exposure. What happens after this was the part of the teaching and learning of the craft. After the project and during the project, there were a lot of embroidery workshops. And after this, books were released, interviews. Also, there is a 3D movie about the dress, so that people can have the digital experience of the dress, so that the experience is going digital and is not finished with the project. So, as a conclusion, the whole process, the whole process of the project can be understood as a process of living musealization, meaning that women come together and can create pieces through crafts, pieces of art that are inspiring also other women and are inspiring other people to do the same. There are a lot of other projects related to dresses and related to artists that were inspired by this project. Artwork is going from individual gesture to a shared cultural artifact. Intense and smart usage of social media through hashtags on the long run, 10 years, 14 years, are building up the community around and making visible the craft so that teaching and learning move also in social media, in digital, and even in museum, so that can become more accessible for a larger public. As a conclusion from traditionally undervalued language of craft, from this project, I understood a lot that it can become a medium of voice and agency and an entire pipeline for learning and shared vision. Some of the references and the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this thoughtful analysis. Are there any questions? We have a question here. We can use the microphone. I think we should use the microphone here, so.
Or if it's easier, you can repeat the question so I can hear it.
Yeah. Okay, so about healing and the emotional aspect of the words. You can add it. Thank you.
Sorry, healing and?
Emotional aspect.
The emotional aspects. Yes, there is an entire group of hashtags related to emotions and how the community is, in fact, how the artist is communicating with the community so that it shares different parts of the project, different moments of, for example, there are the posts from the pandemic and time, and when they came back after in offline workshops, it was very joyful. They were very joyful, all the posts, and I was looking also if the reactions are the same, but I didn't include the comments in the analysis because there were not so many, and so it was not so big, the corpus on that. But the ones that were reacting in the same manner. If the artist was saying emotional things or let's say colorful or related to tradition, the answers from the social media were the same. So for sure, this is influenced by the how the owner of the page, or let's say the artist, is communicating. This gives the direction also for the answers. I don't know if I was very clear about right now.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe we can have one more short question or comment or thought, or we can also come back later on. Okay.
Unfortunately, I will have to leave at 12:30 because I have classes today, so I will stay until then. If it's prolonged, I will have to But you can email if there is something more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we can move on. Next presentation is by Katerini Vasilaki. The title is Dancing Diaspora Greek Folk Dance as Public Anthropology in Qatar. And the presentation is going to be in Greek.
So hello, everybody. I'm really sorry that I prepared the presentation in Greek. I didn't realize that there's not going to be a translation. I was under the impression that there's going to be a translation, and I'm sorry about that. I could easily do it in English, but I don't know why I chose Greek. Anyway, so let me share my screen. Let me say, by the way, that I'm very happy to be here and honored that since this morning, all the presentations were top-notch. So hopefully I can contribute to the conversation. Greek. So, you see my presentation?
Yes, we see it.
My name is Katerina Vasilaki. I'm a PhD student for the University of Ioannina, the Department of Primary Education. Actually, to present myself, I would say that all my life I have been asking whys. And when life took me to Qatar, all those whys, they just blossomed and they were all over the place. So when I came back from Qatar, I stayed there for 8 years. When I came back from Qatar in 2021, I started working on those whys, and here I am making my presentation about dance in diaspora. Unfortunately, as I told you, I have to switch in Greek because my presentation is in Greek. So let me take you to a journey to Qatar. So είναι 18 Δεκεμβρίου. Θα μπορούσε να είναι 18 Δεκεμβρίου πέρυσι, θα μπορούσε να είναι 18 Δεκεμβρίου πριν από μια δεκαετία, θα μπορούσε να είναι σε 2 μήνες που έρχεται η εθνική εορτή του Κατάρ. Το Κατάρ στις 18 Δεκεμβρίου κάθε χρόνο γιορτάζει την ενοποίηση των φυλών και την ίδρυση του κράτους του Κατάρ στα 1878. Για την ιστορία αυτό συνέβη μετά την διάλυση της Οθωμανικής Αυτοκρατορίας. Υπήρξε ένα μεταβατικό στάδιο που το Κατάρ ήταν αγγλικό προτεκτοράτο και έγινε ανεξάρτητο κράτος το 1971. Πάντως 18 Δεκεμβρίου θα δείτε παντού στο Κατάρ αυτή την εικόνα που βλέπετε τώρα. Συνοδεύεται από λαμπρές εκδηλώσεις αυτός ο εορτασμός, καταιγισμός πυροτεχνημάτων. Όλα είναι σε έναν υπερβολικό βαθμό, γίνεται παρέλαση των ενόπλων δυνάμεων, γίνεται μια επίδειξη δύναμης ουσιαστικά και ισχύος και φυσικά προβάλλεται πολύ έντονα και πολύ ισχυρά η εθνική ταυτότητα. Επίσης, πραγματοποιούνται πολιτιστικές εκδηλώσεις εκείνη την ημέρα στο Κατάρ και δρώμενα με σκοπό την ανάδειξη της πολιτιστικής του κληρονομιάς. Εικόνες σαν και αυτή που βλέπετε κατακλείζουν κυριολεκτικά τη χώρα. Οι φωτογραφίες του Εμμύρη και του πατέρα Εμμύρη που βλέπετε εδώ είναι παντού, στους δρόμους, ακόμα και στα αυτοκίνητα όπως βλέπετε. Και φυσικά οι καταρινές σημαίες δεσπόζουν παντού. Αυτό κάθε χρόνο. Ας πάμε τώρα λίγο πίσω στο 2017. Να δούμε τι έγινε στις 18 Δεκεμβρίου του 2017. έγινε το 2017. Προφανώς πραγματοποιήθηκαν οι συνήθεις λαμπροί εορτασμοί, όπως κάθε χρόνο. Όμως, εκείνη τη χρονιά, για πρώτη φορά, οργανώθηκε αυτό που βλέπουμε. Ονομάστηκε από τους διοργανωτές παρέλαση φιλίας. Ήταν η πρώτη φορά που οι διασπορικές κοινότητες πλέον κλήθηκαν να συμμετάσχουν σε εορτασμούς της Εθνικής Επετείου του Κατάρ και τους δόθηκε ρόλος. Και εξαιτίας αυτού του ρόλου τους δόθηκε μια πολύ σημαντική ορατότητα. Να σας πω εδώ ότι η παρέλαση φιλίας θα κατέληγε σε μια εκοχορευτική παράσταση, που όντως έτσι έγινε, στην οποία οι κοινότητες μπορούσαν να παρουσιάσουν τους παραδοσιακούς χορούς τους. Η εκδήλωση αυτή, μάλιστα, θα μεταδιδόταν live στο Εθνικό Τηλεοπτικό Δίκτυο και ο χορός σε ζωντανή μετάδοση επίσης ήταν μια καινοτομία που δεν είχε ξανασυμβεί στο παρελθόν. Και αυτό το γεγονός προκάλεσε και κάποια αμηχανία και προβληματισμό στους διοργανωτές, κυρίως ως προς το τι θα ήταν ανεκτό για να παρουσιαστεί σε live broadcast. Γιατί όμως όλες αυτές οι καινοτομίες? Τι οδήγησε σε αυτή την απόφαση? Γιατί τότε για πρώτη φορά το Κατάρ στράφηκε στις κοινότητες και στο φιλοξενούμενο εργατικό δυναμικό και του έδωσε τόσο πρωτοφανή ορατότητα και ρόλο? Να δούμε λίγο το γενικότερο πλαίσιο. Το 2017 ήταν ένα έτος που σημαδεύτηκε από ένα πρωτοφανές για τη χώρα διπλωματικό επεισόδιο. Τα ξημερώματα της 5ης Ιουνίου του 2017, η Σαουδική Αραβία και τα Ηνωμένα Αραβικά Εμιράτα ανακοίνωσαν ευνηδιαστικά ότι διακόπτουν κάθε διπλωματική σχέση με το Κατάρ, κατηγορώντας το ότι υποστηρίζει ομάδες που υποκινούνται και από το Ιράν, οι οποίες έχουν σκοπό να αποσταθεροποιήσουν την περιοχή, όπως δήλωσαν. Η Αίγυπτος, το Μπαχρέιν και άλλες γειτονικές χώρες ακολούθησαν, οδηγώντας το Κατάρ σε πλήρη διπλωματικό, εμπορικό και γενικότερα οικονομικό αποκλεισμό. Το κλείσιμο των συνόρων και του εναέριου χώρου έθεσε ζητήματα επιβίωσης για το μικρό αυτό κρατήδιο, το μικρό σε έκταση αυτό κράτος, που βασίζεται κυρίως στις εισαγωγές από τις γειτονικές χώρες για την κάλυψη και των πιο στοιχειωδών αναγκών του, καθώς δεν διέθετε μάλλον τότε πρωτογενή παραγωγή. Ο αποκλεισμός αυτός συνοδεύτηκε από μια σειρά αιτημάτων από τα προηγουμένως αδελφά κράτη, αιτήματα που περιλάμβαναν μέχρι και το κλείσιμο του ραδιοτηλεοπτικού ειδησιογραφικού σταθμού Αλ-Τζαζίρα, του δορυφορικού αυτού δικτύου που γνωρίζουμε όλοι. Το Κατάρ δεν δέχτηκε αυτά τα αιτήματα και απάντησε με άμεσο επαναπροσδιορισμό των συμμαχιών του και των εμπορικών και οικονομικών συμφωνιών του με άλλες χώρες που παρέμεναν φίλιες στο πλαίσιο της μουσουλμανικής αδελφότητας, όπως είναι η Τουρκία. Ταυτόχρονα, στο εσωτερικό της χώρας, ο Εμμύρης έγινε το πρόσωπο της αντίστασης και της αντοχής και όλοι έσπευδαν να εκφράσουν την υποστήριξή τους. Αυτό που βλέπετε είναι το πορτρέτο του Εμμύρη. Πολλά πορτρέτα σαν και αυτό είχαν τοποθετηθεί σε πολλά σημεία της πρωτεύουσας και ο καθένας μπορούσε να αφήσει ένα μήνυμα ελπίδας και συμπαράστασης. Μετά την παρέλευση 4 χρόνων, και ενώ το Κατάρ δεν έδειχνε σημάδια υποχώρησης, ο αποκλεισμός τελικά άρθηκε τον Ιανουάριο του 2021. Σήμερα, 4 χρόνια μόλις μετά από τότε, όλοι γνωρίζουμε και παρακολουθούμε τις εξελίξεις στο Μεσανατολικό. Βλέπουμε τώρα το Κατάρ με την Αίγυπτο και τη Σαουδική Αραβία να δρουν συντονισμένα, αναλαμβάνοντας από κοινού σημαντικές πρωτοβουλίες για την ειρήνη στην περιοχή.
Το πιο σημαντικό είναι ότι έστω για αυτή τη μικρή...
Non hai delle interferenze?
Somebody has their microphone on. Could mute it, please. Οπότε να πάμε πάλι πίσω στο 2017. Στην παρέλαση φιλίας, λίγους μήνες μετά την επιβολή του αποκλεισμού αυτού, το Κατάρ αποφασίζει να εορτάσει την εθνική του επέτειο με τον πρωτοφανή μέχρι τότε τρόπο που ανέφερα προηγουμένως, στρέφοντας το βλέμμα του στο εσωτερικό του και στις διασπορικές κοινότητες που αποτελούν τη συντριπτική πλειοψηφία του πληθυσμού του και του εργατικού δυναμικού που στηρίζει αυτή τη ραγδαία ανάπτυξη αυτής της χώρας. Επέλεξε δηλαδή το Κατάρ να αναδείξει την πολυπολιτισμικότητα που το χαρακτηρίζει μέσω αυτής της εκδήλωσης και της χορευτικής παράστασης που ακολούθησε. Οι Sociaux και Charles Young υποστηρίζουν ότι σε αρκετές περιπτώσεις ο χορός χρησιμοποιείται από τα κράτη ως μέσο προβολής της εθνοτικής ποικιλομορφίας και παράλληλα ως σύμβολο πολιτικής υποστήριξης από τον λαό. Στη συγκεκριμένη περίπτωση το ζητούμενο ήταν η προβολή της πολυπολιτισμικότητας και του δυναμικού των διασπορικών κοινοτήτων του Κατάρ, αποφεύγοντας όμως οτιδήποτε θα μπορούσε να θεωρηθεί προκλητικό και εκτός αποδεκτών ορίων. Παράδειγμα, η φωτογραφία που βλέπετε είναι από εκείνη την ημέρα, από αυτή την πρώτη live εμφάνιση της χορευτικής ομάδας των Ελλήνων του Κατάρ στην τηλεόραση. Μπορείτε να δείτε ότι δεν υπάρχει απτική επαφή μεταξύ των χορευτών, των ανδρών και των γυναικών, κρατιούνται από ένα μαντίλι. Αυτό δεν ήταν εξ αρχής σχεδιασμένο, προέκυψε μετά από τις επισημάνσεις και τις παρατηρήσεις των διοργανωτών. Γενικότερα η προσέγγιση των διοργανωτών θυμίζει αυτό που ο Κλίφορντ ονομάζει μη απειλητικό αισθητικοποιημένο διεθνισμό, αναφερόμενος βέβαια στους Ολυμπιακούς Αγώνες που διεξήχθησαν στο Λος Άντζελες, μια παγκόσμια πόλη και αυτή που επέδειξε τις παρουσιάσιμες πλευρές του πολιτισμού. Στην συγκεκριμένη εδώ περίπτωση, η πρόταση για τη συμμετοχή στην εκδήλωση έγινε μέσω των πρεσβειών. Η ελληνική χορευτική ομάδα αποδέχτηκε την πρόταση από την πρεσβεία και έτσι ξεκίνησε μια περίοδος εντατικής προετοιμασίας προκειμένου να συμμετάσχει σε αυτή την πολυπολιτισμική γιορτή. Οι πρώτες φορεσιές της ομάδας ράφτηκαν τότε, μέσω χορηγίας, είναι αυτές που βλέπετε. Παράλληλα, εξαιτίας της ζωντανής μετάδοσης της διοργάνωσης από την τηλεόραση, τέθηκαν και διάφορα ζητήματα σκηνικής παρουσίας που έπρεπε να απαντηθούν σε συνεργασία με τους διοργανωτές. Τα ζητήματα αυτά, όπως είπαμε, αφορούσαν την ευπρέπεια της ενδυμασίας, την απαγόρευση απτικής επαφής ανδρών και γυναικών και διάφορα άλλα θέματα που ανέκυπταν συνεχώς μέχρι κυριολεκτικά την ώρα της παράστασης, ζητήματα καθοριστικά για το τελικό επιτελεστικό αποτέλεσμα. 4 λεπτά, μάλιστα. Θα πω λίγο πιο γρήγορα. Προφανώς βλέπουμε μια αποπλαισιωμένη επιτέλεση του ελληνικού παραδοσιακού χορού, όπου οι επιμέρους προσαρμογές εξειδετέρωσαν τις όποιες άβολες διαφορετικότητες, επικυρώνοντας την ηγεμονία των πολιτισμικά κυρίαρχων, οι οποίοι σε αυτή την περίπτωση ήταν οι διοργανωτές. Σύμφωνα με τον αναγνώστου, η ρητορική της διαφοράς πολλές φορές παράγει μια ισοπεδωτική ομοιομορφία σε ό,τι αφορά στο τι κρίνεται άξιο προς επίδειξη και διατήρηση. Οι όροι της αγοράς της πολυπολιτισμικότητας καθορίζουν με ένα προβλέψιμο τρόπο το τι θεωρείται ως αξιόλογο παρελθόν. Η εμπορευματοποίηση της πολιτιστικής έκφρασης δρά περιοριστικά, προσδίνοντας μια χρειά προβλέψιμου εξωτισμού και αισθητικής ποικιλίας που προσφέρεται όμως μέσα στο προκαθορισμένο περιτύλιγμα της ομοιομορφίας. Παρ' όλα αυτά, οι συμμετέχοντες νοηματοδότησαν την εμπειρία τους αυτή ως μια αποτελεσματική έκφραση πολιτισμικής και ενίοτε ισχυρής εθνικής ταυτότητας. Θα ακούσουμε μικρά αποσπάσματα.
Δεν μπορούσα να περπατήσω καλά, αλλά εντάξει, άκουσε. Αλλά για να συνεχίσουμε είναι ότι το να βγαίνεις και να βλέπεις στο θέατρο ένα κατάμεστο θεατράκι και να ακούγονται η δική σου παραδοσιακή μουσική, να βγαίνεις, να χορεύεις από πίσω το video wall, να παίζει φωτογραφίες από τα νησιά και από Ελλάδα γενικότερα. Λες τώρα είμαστε Έλληνες, βγαίνουμε και θα τους δείξουμε ποιοι είμαστε. Αυτό δεν έχει συνοπτικές διαδικασίες. Δεν μπορούσα να περπατήσω.
Για λόγους οικονομία χρόνου δεν θα τα ακούσουμε τα αποσπάσματα. Να πούμε ότι η εκδήλωση αυτή ως μια έμπρακτη και σαφής προβολή της πολυπολιτισμικότητας του Κατάρ ενίσχυσε τη συνειδητοποίηση και τη νοηματοδότηση της διασπορικής ταυτότητας των συμμετεχόντων. Όπως βλέπετε εδώ μπορείτε να διαβάσετε το λόγο. Να πούμε ότι η ενσώματη συμμετοχή στο χορευτικό δρόμενο βλέπουμε ότι παρέχει έναν τρόπο σύνδεσης και ανάδειξης της οικουμενικότητας του χορού, που ενώ αναδύεται ένας ιδιόμορφος κοσμοπολιτισμός που αντιμετωπίζει, ξέρουμε ότι ο κοσμοπολιτισμός αντιμετωπίζει τα κράτη ως μέρος μιας φθήνουσας πολιτικής διαχωρισμού μεταξύ των συνόρων. Ο Καλχούν έχει πει ότι η θεωρία του κοσμοπολιτισμού αποδίδει μικρή σημασία στην έννοια του ανήκειν, στη σημασία των κοινωνικών σχέσεων και τη συνύπαρξη σε πολιτισμικά περιβάλλοντα. Ωστόσο, ο χορός ως ενσώματη πρακτική και ως κοινό πολιτισμικό σημείο αναφοράς μπορεί να οδηγήσει στη δημιουργία πνεύματος αλληλεγγύης στα διασπορικά περιβάλλοντα και να καλλιεργήσει μια αίσθηση του ανήκειν που δεν ταιριάζει πάρα πολύ σε αυτό το κοσμοπολιτικό πλαίσιο. Θα ακούσετε χαρακτηριστικά πολύ γρήγορα αυτό το λόγο του ότι έστω για αυτή τη μικρή χρονική περίοδος ήταν στο Κατάρ το σπίτι σου.
Ναι. Το ένιωθα και με το παραπάνω. Και γενικότερα, δηλαδή την προσέγγιση μου ως πολίτη του κόσμου που εργάζεται κάπου. Οπότε, πώς να το πω, η έννοια του σπιτιού είναι λίγο ευρεία, αλλά και ειδικότερα ένιωθα κομμάτι ότι ανήκω, ας πούμε, εκεί και σε αυτό βοήθησε και η ελληνική κοινότητα με το χορευτικό γκρουπ πολύ. Γι' αυτό. Δεν έλειπε κάτι από το Κατάρ που θα με οδηγούσε να αισθάνομαι ότι δεν ανήκω εκεί. Ενώ σε άλλες περιοχές και στον αραβικό κόσμο το έχω βιώσει.
Ότι έστω για... θα κλείσω με αυτό. Δεν θα πω στη διαδικασία των συμπερασμάτων και της συζήτησης. Απλά θα ήθελα να δούμε το πλαίσιο που, να πούμε λίγο στη δημόσια ανθρωπολογία, το πλαίσιο που ο παραδοσιακός χώρος όταν παρουσιάζεται δημόσια από τις διασπορικές κοινότητες μπορεί να αποτελέσει ένα ισχυρό εργαλείο δημόσιας ανθρωπολογικής πράξης, αφενός ως ενσώματη έκφραση πολιτισμικής ταυτότητας και συλλογικότητας και αφετέρου ως τρόπος δημόσιας μη λεκτικής επικοινωνίας με άλλες κοινότητες. Οι χορευτικές παραστάσεις όταν λαμβάνουν χώρα μπροστά από ένα ευρύ κοινό μπορούν να εκλειφθούν ως μια παράλληλη εθνογραφία, όπου η κίνηση, το σώμα και το βίωμα νοηματοδοτούν τη χορευτική πράξη πολιτισμικά και μπορούν να αποτελέσουν τρόπο μη λεκτικής επικοινωνίας και προβολής ταυτοτήτων, αλλά και πολιτική στάση ανάλογα με το πλαίσιο στο οποίο επιτελούνται. Ένα τελευταίο λόγο θα ακούσουμε και θα κλείσω με αυτό χωρίς να πω κάτι άλλο.
Το πιο σημαντικό είναι ότι τους δώσαμε μια γεύση Ελλάδας, την οποία νομίζω ποτέ τους δεν θα μπορούσαν να την πάρουν έτσι. Δηλαδή, οι γεύσεις που έχουν από την Ελλάδα, τι είναι, από τα ελληνικά εστιατόρια εδώ πέρα, έχουν ακούσει για τη Μύκονο τη Σαντορίνη, μπορεί να έχουν δει και οι πιο intellectual, ας πούμε, 2-3 φωτογραφίες Ακρόπολης και αυτό είναι. Νομίζω ότι αυτό που τους παρουσιάσαμε εκείνη την ημέρα ήταν κάτι πολύ αυθεντικό, πολύ ανθρώπινο, πολύ γιωμένο γενικώς. Και νομίζω ότι οι άνθρωποι από όλες τις κουλτούρες τελικά αυτό εκτιμούν. Δεν θέλουν δήθεν πράγματα, δεν θέλουν να βλέπουν ένα θέαμα το οποίο προσφέρεται, πώς να σου πω, από καθέδρας. Αυτό που, παρόλο που εμείς χορεύαμε στη σκηνή για αυτές ήταν από κάτω, όπως θυμάστε η σκηνή δεν ήταν και πολύ ψηλή, νομίζω ότι και αυτό έπαιξε το ρόλο του. Ήμασταν περίπου στο ίδιο επίπεδο. Οπότε θεωρώ ότι τους προσφέραμε ένα θέαμα και πληροφορίες οι οποίες ήταν πολύ εύληπτες και οι οποίες τους έκαναν να καταλάβουν πολύ περισσότερα πράγματα για την Ελλάδα και να εκτιμήσουν και την Ελλάδα βέβαια και την κουλτούρα της, αλλά και τους Έλληνες. Δηλαδή, νομίζω ότι κάναμε καλή δουλειά ως προς το να...
Αναπαραστάσεις. Με αυτό θα κλείσω. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την προσοχή σας.
Okay, ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Thank you so much for that an interesting presentation. Ήταν μια τρομερά ενδιαφέρουσα παρουσίαση. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Αν υπάρχουν ερωτήσεις στη φάση, έχουμε 1 λεπτό, έτσι κάτι πολύ σύντομα αν θέλετε, αλλιώς μπορούμε να επανέλθουμε στο τέλος.
The language barrier is huge, so you can discuss.
Okay, maybe we should move on and come back again. Okay. So next presentation is by Kerasenia Papalexiou. The title is The Anthropology of Ancient Greek Religion, an Early Multimodal Experience.
Hello from me. I want first to share my screen if it is possible.
Yes, please.
Is it visible, everything?
Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Ksenia Papalexiou. I am from the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, and the title of my presentation is The Anthropology of Ancient Greek Religion and Early Multimodal Experience. Ancient Greek religion, I think I have to, okay. As a historical social phenomenon, presented a significant evolution in the ancient world, polytheistic, monotheistic, anthropomorphical, conceptual, establishing a new way of perceiving the world, taking into account the fragility of human life, the fear and awe of the unknown, the inexplicable and the unsolvable. Ancient Greek religion and worship laid a valuable foundation for the unique cultural identity of the ancient Greek world and played an important role in its history. The aim of the presentation is the philosophical anthropological approach to ancient Greek religion, about the reference context, the social, cultural, and philosophical significance of the pragmatic impact Greek religion as a type of multimodal experience for its time. Sanctuaries, altars, festivals, applications, oracles, philosophers, and more. Second, how the citizens of the state understand this experience both ethically and epistemologically, as well as anthropologically. Cultural diversity is not a static phenomenon, but a dynamic process in which philosophy and science, religion and worship, art and politics are integrated, coexist, and interact. This interplay and its influence on the formation of theoretical concepts and modes of life constitutes the foundation of philosophical anthropology. In this context, we focus on the multimodal nature of religious experience as a valuable tool that contributed to the cultural explosion of the classical era by creating some of the first pillars of anthropological insight, understanding the relationship between humans and their own selves, understanding the relationship between humans and gods, nature, knowledge, politics, and laws. Almost all the spiritual tendencies of the ancient Greek world are represented in the diversity and long-standing presence of ancient Greek religion. Mystery, transcendence, anthropomorphism, popular and spiritual culture, philosophy, experientialism, and worship experience. First of all, we have to make a very short history of this experience. The presence of ancient Greek religion can be traced back to the Bronze Age. The most important reference cultures in this early level of its appearance are the Cycladic, the Minoan, and the Mycenaean cultivations. The marble figurines of Cycladic idolatry provide indirect information about religious ceremonies. The presence of female figures of deities, Mother Earth, fertility, euphoria, is dominant in worship since the Neolithic era, domestic worship, ancestral worship. In prehistoric times, defined elements of nature and are observed the first forms of natural religions, followed by the world of chthonic deities and the dying god. The way people deal with the cataclysmic event of death and the unknown has had a decisive influence on all religions of antiquity. The funerary and mortuary cult, the worship of heroes as gods, are important during the Mycenaean period. Ancient Greek religion took shape, however, during the 8th and 7th centuries BC with the works of Homer and Hesiod. Schematically, the various phases of ancient Greek religion begin with the pre-Hellenic deities, the Minoan-Mycenaean civilization, the pre-Homeric deities, the archaic epic poetry, Homer, the didactic epic, Hesiod, lyrical and choral poetry, the Orphic and Pythagorean teachings, the religious concepts of the classical era, the Hellenistic times, and finally the Neoplatonism. A greater emphasis is placed on Homer and Hesiod in my paper, given that the anthropomorphic, symbolic, and semiotic aspects of ancient Greek religion are more familiar and broadly disseminated. Homer is not only the epic poet of the heroic epic, but also the founder of an important phase of ancient Greek religion, the Homeric religion. In the heroic epic, 12 Olympian gods, as 12 Olympians known, play a dominant role, with Zeus, Athena, and Apollo standing out as the most powerful among them. The morality of these gods aligns with their personal passions, preferences, and emotions, such as anger, stubbornness, and cruelty. They intervene extensively in the lives of mortals and appear unconstrained by any fixed moral code. As Lloyd Jones observes, in pre-Platonic Greece, morality lacks the conceptualizations of will, point that distinguishes the ethical framework of this period from the later developed by philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle. In Homer, there is a performative phobic relationship between humans and gods. The mortal begs the god, and the god immediately fulfills his prayer, provided that a favorable wind blows in their relation. The anthropomorphic gods of Olympus possibly have something in common with the corresponding world of the Near East. Hesiod emerged in the so-called didactic epic, narrating the everyday life of human civilization, which is based on the evolution of the 5 races of people: golden, silver, bronze, heroic, iron. The concept of justice is dominant in his work, especially in the Theogony. Hesiod presents the genealogy of the gods and attempts to present a kind of cosmogony. Theogonic triangle, Uranos, Sky, Saturn, Zeus. The origin of the gods begins with a genesis of cosmic elements, Chaos, Gaia, and Eros. This genealogy constitutes the first generation of gods, which comprises the natural world, Uranos and Gaia. The second generation of gods, Cronus and Rhea, or Saturn and Rhea, gives movement to the static natural world. Some generation of gods is represented by Zeus, who prevails. Each generation prevails over the previous one by exercising violence and committing abominable acts. Particularly during classical times, the one and only God also became the subject of philosophical research, epistemology, ontology, ethics, but not the famous dodecatheon, the 12 Olympian gods. The relationships between gods and humans is based on human experience. The gods respect and recognize the valuable contribution of experience to human life and the organization of societies according to ancient times. In Minoan Crete, the religious devotion to the forces of nature, birth, withering, death, the annual cycle of reproduction, combined with the strong presence of female deities, formed an organized framework of worship. But much later, during the classical era, we will see a female deity, Artemis, protector of childbirth. In this case, the goddess protection will be justified by the unwavering argument of experience. The goddess, realizing the value of experience, did not give women who had not had children the ability to practice the art of midwifery, but rather to those who had this experience so that they could help more effectively. I will give only the translation. You are barren, therefore you did not give birth, because human nature is weaker than the art of taking an infinite amount. But to those who are barren for aids, see ordered in honor of your likeness. Over the centuries-long development of ancient Greek religion, its philosophical and theoretical foundations evolved significantly from the monistic ontology of the pre-Socratics to the Platonic concept of the god, the later to Aristotelian metaphysics. These developments fundamentally challenged the one solid ground on which the authority of the 12 Olympians had stood. The philosophical anthropological approach to the multimodal nature of ancient Greek religion focuses on the following aspects. First of all, the multimodal character of ancient Greek religion is based on a type of human experience, as already we have said. Initially, the practical everyday character of human experience, the empirical life of people, and progressively, the intellectual character of human experience. From the classical era onwards, man can approach God through the idea of the good, Plato, and through the intellect, Aristotle. So the aspects that the ancient Greek religion has give us this multimodal nature are considered public and private. In its worship, in the formation of specific religious experiences in specific social circumstances, with a festive, recreational, cultural character, and within or near key sacred or prominent temples. In dominant and dynamic forms, both major and minor divine figures in their distinctive modes of manifestation, theophany or incarnation, a kind of a divine epiphany. In the combination of human and divine attributes, such as wisdom, erotic desire, martial prowess, and so on, in the forms of the gods, divinities, and in their relationship to observable reality. The 12 gods led to a fragmentation of reality. As is known, each god corresponded to an aspect of reality, needs, and daily life. Ancient Greek religion was the one that offered the first acceptable, respected, and experientially acceptable categorizations: men, women, parents, children, young, older, smart, dynamic, or nervous, loud, winners, losers. Next axis is the experience of political life in the classical era, and the formation of civic consciousness contributed to the evolution of religious concepts, which were linked to philosophical reflection and philosophical discourse. Ancient Greek religion functions as a complex semiotic system in which deities, rituals, myths, and sacred spaces operate as culturally encoded signs. Religious practices such as offerings, libations, processions, and sacrifices are not merely acts of devotion, but signifying gestures that structure and relationship between mortals and the divine. Mythological narratives, far from being simple stories, constitute dense networks of meaning that articulate fundamental cultural positions such as life and death, house and order, mortal and immortal. A visual representation of gods through specific iconographic conventions, attributes, and postures reinforces their identities and spheres of influence, while the spatial organization of sanctuaries and temples contributes to the constructions of the sacred through formal and symbolic means. Ritual performances action as embodied text that produce and reaffirm social and cosmic order. Furthermore, the religious sign system plays a crucial role in political life as well as civic identity, power structures, and collective memory are continually negotiated and affirmed through shared religious symbols and practices. In this sense, Greek religion does not merely reflect beliefs, but actively shapes meaning through a dynamic interplay of signs. Let's consider that the religion consciousness of the early period in the ancient Greek world was created and fueled not only by man's experimental relationship with the concept of the sacred, but also by his need, the fear of the unknown, and the will of God, as well as despair, mainly expressed in epics and drama. It is understandable why the explanatory model of myth initially gained interpretative ground. Man's relationship with religion reflects his relationship with death, the nature, and the fate of the soul after death, the values of his culture, the city, and what man can know about the mystery of the unknown. The dominant concept in the relationship between gods and mortals was the concept of measure and not the concept of morality. The city-state evolves and grows, the scope of which governs every aspect of private and public life, shaping a specific political perception and anthropological perspective. Religion in the city-state shapes identities and defines both the citizen and the city itself. The search for the divine was part of the identity of the man of ancient Greece, integrated into the joints of his daily life and involved in his spiritual, cultural, and social life. So for the aiding, city religion, art, harmony, nature were unified in the establishment of sanctuaries. This complex will definitely be differentiated into distinct dimensions of thought with the establishment of philosophical discourse. The city-states, despite the above differentiations, shared the common substrate of ancient Greek religion, which took on a pan-Hellenic character mainly through myths, as Parker notes. The ancient sanctuaries, perfectly socially and religiously organized, constitute a social prominent faction of the city-state with a socializing role. The formal ritual worship, sacrifices, initiations, etc., was strict, and this is one of the reasons for the timeliness. The code of values of ancient Greek religion, ethics, is based on the peculiar regime of existence of the gods, a kind of phenomenology, anthropomorphisms, and the divine epiphany, and the issue of error, which was also relevant to man's attitude towards God, the transgression of limits, the arrogance of human knowledge. In conclusion, the social, epistemological, and anthropological dimensions of ancient Greek religion emerged not solely through the rise of philosophical inquiry, but also through the complex, multivalent nature of its divine figures. The interplay between mythic person and philosophical concepts offers a rich interpretative framework for understanding a religion's tradition that, despite lacking sacred scriptures or fixed dogma, was deeply woven into the thought and creativity of poets, dramatists, and philosophers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this rich presentation. Do you have any questions or comments? Maybe not yet. Okay. So we can move on to the next presentation by Elena Tagliani and Samuele Paganoni by the title Teaching to Read Reality Through an Anthropological Eye in Greece.
Thank you. We are here. Can you they share the former slides?
But
okay, thank you.
We can share them
okay.
from our.
I try to find.
Okay. So, in the meanwhile, I present myself. I'm Samuele Paganoni.
You see my slides, our slides?
No, not yet.
No.
Yes.
Condivido una finestra.
Yeah, I think you have to choose another window because we can see that you are sharing your screen, but
Yes.
Okay, so
You're sharing,
I will
but you're
try another.
not sharing the window, right window.
Ok. Ma non vedo la finestra. So I do that, and I do that.
I moved that. We are sharing the same room. I moved to the other desk to check.
Vedi, guarda. Aspetta.
It was okay.
Finestra. No, hybrid. Ok. You see now?
Not yet. You
Have
have to
faith.
choose the window that the presentation is open.
The problem is
you have
that
to choose the right window, actually. You have to choose the window of the PowerPoint.
Yes, but the problem is that impostazioni, no. Condivide una finestra, ma non vede la finestra. Sorry.
Okay.
Close this one and choose the window with the PowerPoint. It was...
Ok, nascondi. Allora, ok. Se mi viene ad aiutare, Sam.
Yeah, okay, so...
Windows. Ok. You see?
Yes.
That?
Copy.
Ok, grazie.
Thank you.
So, the floor is
Oh, okay.
Dimmi quando sei pronto e la faccio partire.
Okay, I understand. Before we start, I understand we have like 20 minutes or so, right?
15 for presentation, 5 for discussion, so somewhere between.
Okay, πρέπει να τρέξουμε λίγο. It's not. I cannot hear. So, did you hear that there was a background music? Did you hear it?
No, we can hear
because
you.
I didn't.
It's fine.
Ha sentito? Sì.
Okay. So, anyone knows the song that we just heard? I suppose that a lot of you recognized it. That's the song of the Kyrios, the main character of the Greek Rado theater, and it will help us to introduce to this subject. Today, we'd like to discuss with you the relationship between reflexivity as a mindset for a community to read their own reality and the role of anthropological knowledge of the world. Using this study case of the pure art of Karagiozis, will show how anthropology can relate both to scientific disciplinary field and to a non-specialized, non-discursive practice of critical political thought.
Reflexivity, as a socio-anthropological category, plays a foundational role in shaping the ethical and epistemological commitments of anthropological knowledge. It refers not only to the researcher's awareness of their posture, but also to a broader capacity for self-questioning and understanding social context of the observed. Our point is that reflexivity is not the exclusive domain of the trained anthropologist. Rather, it reveals itself as a human capacity, a mode of being in the world that invites individuals to examine their assumptions, social embeddedness, and even political thought. Reflexivity is about anthropological knowledge, both from the epistemological and the ethical point of view. Is not only a disciplinary approach, but also a critical mindset toward institutionalized power. In this sense, anthropology is not confined to scientific expertise, but can emerge as a political engagement. Reflexivity as both a method and a political gesture helps anthropology to rethink in authority and the conditions of knowledge productions. And we'll see how, for the Karagiosi, irony is the key to read reality. Sì, c'è un ritorno.
Okay, it's okay. Well, I don't see the slides changing. No, I don't see the slides. The slides going on. The presentation is not going on.
We cannot see
what
them.
I see is stopped on the first slide.
Something doesn't. So.
I'm sorry for.
Interruption.
We would have liked to be there, but it was unfortunately was not possible, and we're really sorry for this because we are sure that we would have.
Io non vedo la finestra.
And first of all, and second, that surely, and for sure, do
you see it?
All these
well, I have to
troubles.
let you know that
Technical
we cannot
troubles.
hear
We
clearly,
don't see the
Samuele, but we can hear clear Elena. So the sound is much better when Elena speaks. I'm not sure why. And no, we cannot see the power.
Vieni qua.
Sorry.
So,
Spegnilo.
Okay, I sit over there. I turn off my presentation. I'm sorry for this. I move the other.
Vieni.
Okay.
Can you share the PowerPoint again?
Sorry?
Can you share the PowerPoint again?
It's shared.
No. You have to choose the window of PowerPoint.
I cannot see the window, but I retry.
Okay, just push the green button, and then.
Yes, but I see just the monitor, just the screen, not the. Ok. Perché non sono nello stesso. Ma no,
Under the entire screen, you should see application windows, actually.
Yeah.
No?
Just a moment. I think I have to call. Sorry for that.
Would you like to move on with the presentation without the PowerPoint?
No. That's that's the best part of our presentation. Just wait till I reach the presentation. Dimmi cos'è questa? Questa, Tane Jean. That's the one. Okay. So coming here and seeing finally the. Oh.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
Okay. Former was this one, showing reflexivity in Greece. And the present is also about reflexivity. You see shadow theater as a picture, people creating another self and reflecting about this. And these are us doing fieldwork. Next one.
Okay, I go on. Our study case is in Greece, focusing on the popular nomadic performances issued from ancient traditions with cultural, symbolic, and political content. This local form of shadow theater comes from the Far East and is spread all over the Greek cultural area, and also circulating in modern times throughout the Balkans, Turkey, Egypt, with slightly different features. Here we explore how the traditional Greek shadow theater of Karagiosis functions as a transformative, transgenerational, pedagogical tool to rethink politics with a non-institutional approach, enabling people to read their own contemporary reality through an anthropological lens.
Drawing on our long-term ethnographic fieldwork, we examine the work and the social role of the Karagiosopektes, the shadow theater performers.
who creatively combine traditional storylines with acute social and political commentary. The puppeteers' families participate in staging the setup, in the writing of the stories, in the crafting of the puppets, which is an art in itself, and raise widespread interest among the people.
Plays can be held in public or private spaces, from the schools to the parks, in cinemas, open-air theaters, pubs, and nightclubs. And the companies travel all around Greece to reach even the remotest villages, as they did in past times. In summertime, the whole family goes to the plays. During wintertime, children learn at school about Karagiosi's adventures and characters and play even at home with the puppets.
We still see slide 3. Are you moving your slides?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'll check on the other one.
Number 3.
Go back. Okay. I go back here.
Cioè, quindi devo tornare.
There, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, stay there.
Okay, so now it's moving.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a big problem.
Oh.
I don't know how to open and how to share our screen.
You have to open your PowerPoint and then just click the green
That's
button.
open. Okay. You see that?
I suggest.
You have to scipiso apostiski S or...
No, you don't share your screen.
The other one.
Non c'è più.
Here, you go from there.
Non c'è più. Non riesco a farlo, non riesco a capire perché.
Adesso vedo la foto.
Now?
Yes, can you just, okay. Can you change?
3 was this one, the 4.
Okay,
This,
okay, now we can see moving. Yeah, okay.
I'll keep it like that because
Yes.
this one images from the Far East that can be found at the museum in Marousi, Athena, the Museum Spazzario Museo. You can see the iconography comes from the Far East and travels all around the world. That is one of the young puppeteers from Thessaloniki, and his blog on Facebook. Other puppeteers in town and in beach. And this is Macri family from Patra, staging the scene, the Pani, the Berde. The ones are in Megaro Musikis in Athena, the company of Karelas, Ilias Karelas. Evgenios Patharis was one of the first and most influential puppeteers, and this is in Marousi in the festival, annual festival of Karagiosopekton, the family Cappelli. Those one from our fieldwork are people in town, in the villages, in Takoria, open air in the in places, in public places, and the cinemas. The one is the role of children. You can see that children have a special place behind, in front of the puppeteer, and engage a dialogue with the puppeteer. Those one are merchandising, are plays given to the children to play at home. So with educational purpose. In the Museum of Marousi, we found that puppets were sold and given to be cut to play puppets at home, and this is a ticket of Lachio lottery. And the one in the islands in Tinos shows the social role the character plays even at our days. you say, what beautiful. There are. I was talking about interviews. Younger and older puppeteers are being interviewed on radio, in TV, Earth, and this is a documentary given in October, right now, Piece of Otischies, about the role of the puppeteers. And those ones are Aphysis, credo che si chiami, posters from throughout the Greece.
Posters.
You can see? Okay. You can see historical, popular, and Yainilic aged stories, which are most political or historical political, like this one. You can see that history is often revisited and offers an opportunity to share the reflection among audience. Se tu vuoi venire a parlare, Sam?
Okay, I can be.
So I suppose we can just skip and go to because we have a little time left.
Okay.
We can start, I suppose, from 24.
Okay, 23.
23. During the performances, they invite, we are talking about the Karagiozopektes, the artists of this form of theater. During the performances, they invite audience not to just laugh or sing together, but also to think and to engage themselves in a form of citizen ethnography, which ends in opening a bottom-up political arena for the discussion of inequalities and contradictions. This vernacular form of storytelling fosters an anthropological disposition among spectators, inviting them to question norms, reflect on power relations, and reclaim agency in public discourse. In this sense, the shadow theater is a tool to co-produce political thought from a non-institutional perspective.
You can say pos homos en astokos laikos anthropos borinax egelasiti nidiatin exousia. That means that is the main anthropological question proposed to the audience to reflect on. During performances and after the performances, there are the opportunity to interact. Those one are the figures, the puppets sold to the children, as I was saying before, and those one shows how puppeteer come out of the scene to talk and to interact with the children. Bye.
Okay, through a symbolic language, technical improvisation techniques, and a wide set of inclusive patterns intended to invite comments and participation from the audience, and of course through humor, which is the main posture of Karagiozis, the Greek shadow theater clearly reflects the ordinary people's relationships to politics. Thus, the puppeteers engage a dialogue, which engage also wide audiences across generations. Often is staged in schools and community settings, and it's a medium not only of entertainment but also of civic education.
Karagiozis reminds us, as in the broader Balkan cultural sphere, a main character of the recurring and popular narrative as a social bandit figure. This is a concept elaborated by Eric Hobsbawm in Bandits, and it's a peasant outlaw who, while labeled as criminal by the authority, yet are perceived by the people as a hero and champion of justice. And indeed, the Karagiozis is a popular anti-hero and champion of ironies, shedding light on contradictions and mismatch of power.
right? And closing features like voice and behaviors of each character are rooted in the far tradition of the shadow theater, and making each character immediately recognizable by the audience as a social ideal type. The vain, the doctor, the astronaut, the thief, the hero. And another important thing is that main characters also enter the scene accompanied by their own identification song, often played by live musicians, as well known and well known by the public, the teams.
The figures, the puppets, are not just...
just 1 more minute to conclude.
Okay. They are a real representation of social roles which the audience recognizes and knows and reacts to. Each of them shows the audience a personal attitude toward the power, starting from the place they live in. That the Seni, the Pani, the Berde, the Paranga, the Slack of the Karagiosis, and the Palace of the Serai, the Palace of the Power.
Okay, jump to the conclusions.
Yes.
Because we have no time. And by this one.
By framing Karagiosis as a site of informal yet powerful teaching, we show how the anthropology can learn from and contribute to popular pedagogy that challenge the hegemonic narratives and cultivate social imagination. Allora possiamo chiudere qua. Thank you. And sorry for the technical problems.
No, it's normal. Thank you for such an interesting presentation. It's just that we're stealing precious time from our lunch break. So
that's a problem,
but thank you so much. So I don't know if anyone wants to use, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds or because we do have a lunch break, though it's quite unusual. It's not a Greek lunchtime, but we have to follow and we have to stick to the program. But congratulations to everyone. It was such a wonderful panel. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.